People you talking about, they spent money on white women. They set up bars and they went playing pool and golf for $1,000 a hole, and they were known to make millions and millions when there wasn't no high taxes, and they were not hindered by white America. They were allowed to see the white America has completely closed all the doors on me. I'm not allowed to work in America, out of America. I was stopped right in my prime just when I started making money. So you can't compare me with nobody like Joe Lewis or nobody.
And if you are black, if you are brown, if you are indigenous, and if you are poor, this system is rigged and it is worked to the core, and we gonna unbreak it. That's it. And that's all.
That other kind of socialism that revolutionizes the workplace, brings democracy to the workplace for the first time.
So that's one way. And then the other thing is, in my more optimistic days, he's such a perfect endpoint of everything that is toxic and dysfunctional about the United States, about capitalism, about the 80s, that maybe this is the final sort of disgusting burst before we evolve or change it to something better.
Talk about some things about why we need a new party. So I thought that'd be a good way to kind of do this. Why do we need a new party? We need a new party because both parties suck, John.
What are they talking about? Fortified. Are you fortified for the long run? Do you have your cemetery clothes on? Are you coffin ready to live and die for something bigger than you, like a fundamental transformation of a capitalist civilization?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Radical Democracy Show. I'm your host, Kamala Rose. It is December 3rd, 2020. We are almost out of this year, y'all, and what a year it has been. So I am going to try to get right to the stories today. I'll try not to, just going to try to jump right into it. Let's dive right into it. So want to say to anyone, do us a favor, immediately, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed, and please share this out. Just hit that share button, share it on Facebook, share it on Twitter, wherever you're at. Please share this out and let folks know. We need your help to grow grow the show, grow the platform. And we deeply appreciate that. To anyone who can afford to do so, of course, we ask, and only to those who can afford to do so, please support the show on Coffee at ko-fi.com/radical democracy. We deeply appreciate that. We need those donations, and we rely on that as independent media. So please support independent Black left media by supporting this show. Links are in the description box below, so you can just open up the description box, just scroll down to the bottom of it, and you'll see links to our Coffee. You'll also find links to our Patreon as well. If you're already on Patreon and would like to support us there, you can support us at patreon.com/radical democracy. So please do so if you can afford to do that. And I just want to say a massive thank you to our entire Patreon community, our entire Coffee community, all of the supporters of the show, and everyone else, all of our other comrades that watch and share. We deeply appreciate that. So just thank you for doing what you do and for being part of this community. We love and appreciate you all. If you sign up for more than $5 on any one of our platforms, you will receive an invitation to join our Discord server, where we just chat. You could recommend articles that you'd like to see, or any stories that you'd like to see covered on the show, topics for the show, and much more. Hang out with us, chat with us. So please do so if you can afford to do so. All right, let's get right to it. For our first story today, we're going to talk about we're going to get a few quick stories out of the way, and then we'll get to the sort of meat of the show. But wanted to cover a few stories that I saw that just were, jumped out at me over the course of the week. So first up, we are going to talk about Disney, and Disney has decided to, up the number of layoffs that they had already planned. They were already planning to do 28,000 layoffs by March. They've now increased that number to 32,000. So Disney is expecting to lay off 32,000 of its workers by March. They have over 200,000 people employed, over 100,000 people employed in the United States. And this is that's a significant portion of their workforce. They're doing this Disney made over $10 billion in profit last year. Over the course of this year so far, they've lost about $2.8 billion. But if you put that together, that's a profit of over $7 billion. That's over $7.5 billion profit over the last 2 years. So where the hell did all that money go? So let's just check out this article real quick. We'll just show you this article from CNN. And you'll see here from CNN Business, Disney increases number of planned layoffs to 32,000 employees. This was published on November 26th. And all right, so Walt Disney Co. is planning to shed 32,000 employees by the end of March, 4,000 more than previously announced, as the coronavirus pandemic continues to hammer its parks and resorts business. The additional layoffs were disclosed in a filing to the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission on Wednesday. Disney employs around 223,000 people, according to its most recent annual report. It had already announced plans to cut about 28,000 jobs in September. So already they were planning to cut more than 10% of their workforce. More than 1 in every 10 employees would be without a job. That number has only increased now. But continuing on from this article, the media and entertainment giant warned that it may also be forced to scrap its dividend in the future and reduce or not make contributions to pension and retirement medical plans. It said it could slash investment in television and film products and furlough or terminate even more employees. So even more than the 32,000 now announced. They said they may have to furlough or terminate even more than that. And also slash pensions, they said. Some of these measures may have adverse impact on our businesses, Disney said in the filing. The pandemic has slammed Disney's parks business, which has more than 100,000 employees in the United States. The company has also been forced to suspend cruise ship sailings and delay major film releases such as Black Widow, which was expected to be one of the year's biggest blockbusters. Now that the company is preparing to cut thousands more jobs than it announced in September, it could attract the ire of Senator Elizabeth Warren and Abigail Disney, who have already condemned the company for the layoffs. Abigail Disney is a granddaughter of Roy Disney, who founded the company in 1923 with his brother Walt Disney. Warren accused Disney of making short-sighted business decisions and rewarding executives and shareholders through, quote, hefty compensation packages, dividend payments, and share buybacks in the years leading up to the crisis, a position that Disney CEO Bob Chapek described as, quote, ill-considered and misleading. Abigail Disney has publicly backed the Democratic senator in the dispute. All 12 of Disney's parks in North America, Asia, and Europe were closed between March and May, while Disney has since reopened theme parks in Shanghai and Florida. Its flagship park in California will remain shut at least until the end of 2020. Disneyland Paris was forced to close again late last month when France imposed a second nationwide lockdown. So, as you can see from the article in CNN there, they were already planning to slash 28,000 jobs. Now they're going to be cutting even more than that, to be potentially terminating. They've said at least 32,000. It could increase. The numbers could increase even further. And so this is part of, they said in there. Let's just take a look at some. I want to show one more thing here about their profits that they've made here. So real quick. So they go on to say that one bright spot has been its streaming service, Disney Plus, which now has some 74 million subscribers and has become the focus of the business following an overhaul of its media and entertainment division. Chapek said in an earnings statement last week that its direct-to-consumer business is, quote, key to the company's future. Disney swung to a loss of $2.8 billion for the year to September 30th, marking a sharp reversal from the previous year when the company posted a $10.4 billion profit. Okay, so that's saying that Disney lost $2.8 billion up for the year up until September 30th, but last year they made a $10.4 billion profit. So that's $7.6 billion of profit over the past 2 years. So a company that has $7.5 billion in profit over the past 2 years is claiming that it can't afford to pay, to continue paying these 32,000 workers. I call BS. I call bullshit on that. You have $7.5 billion, and you mean to tell me you can't cover the wages? You can't cover the wages of these people? That's absurd. That's absurd. So, what is it? You got 32,000 people. If you were giving them each, 100,000 or whatever, you just add those, those 5 zeros onto the 32,000 or whatever. So you're talking about, what is that? $320 million to cover the salaries for $100,000 each. You could give them $100,000 each for that amount. So, it sounds like BS, right? It just seems like BS, right? So, and what is it? So this is what these companies do. Let me just check my math on that. Sorry, y'all. I'm just gonna check my math here. Okay, 3.2 billion. Okay, so $3.2 billion covers $100,000 each, which we all know. So I was off by a factor of 10 there. Just wanted to make sure. Let me check you gotta check your math. All right, so 3.2 billion covers $100,000, and we all know these workers are not getting paid $100,000 each, right? It's at least half of that. It's at least half of that. Half of that would represent $25 an hour. These workers are mostly minimum wage workers. Disney, just under the pressure of Bernie Sanders earlier in the year, increased their wages, their minimum wage, to $15 an hour under the pressure of striking workers and Bernie Sanders. did pledge to increase their minimum wage to $15 an hour. I don't think they've done it instantaneously. I believe they worked their way up to it, but so, you know, $15 an hour, that's $30,000 a year. So these people aren't making this, a third of that, probably, these workers. And we all know this is going to disproportionately impact the lowest wage workers. And so 32,000 people laid off with $7.5 billion profit over the past 2 years. You could more than cover those people's wages. You could comfortably cover those wages. In fact, you can give them all a raise and send them all home to stay safe, to cover this pandemic. You know, that's what you would do. And if you gave all, now, you know, you often hear me advocate for workplace democracy. In a democratic workplace at this stage, you give all these workers a vote. You give the workers a vote and you say, would you like to lay off, 32,000 of you either have to completely lose a job, or so that we can pay a bunch of CEOs and executives bonuses, $1 million bonuses. Some of you are going to have to lose your jobs in the middle of a pandemic, or we take half of the profits that we've made over the course of just the past 2 years. We're only looking at the past 2 years. Remember, Disney is a highly profitable business, all right? And these workers have been a major part of that profit, right? And so they are, would all those workers have voted to lay off 32,000 of their friends, their family, their co-workers? Or would they have decided that, no, you know what? We're not going to pay out $1 million bonuses to executives, and we're not going to pay out dividends because, you know what? We didn't actually make a profit. These so-called profits that we make, they weren't real profits because they didn't prepare for something like this when you should have been preparing, because viruses are nothing new to the human race, all right? Viruses are something that we live with. You have to be ready and expecting that these sorts of things are going to happen. And so you have to prepare for these things. And in a democratic workplace, you would, if you gave the workers a vote here, would they have decided to, ship themselves off, furlough all these employees, eventually terminate all of these employees, and give, tens of millions of dollars to all of their top executives, or just cover these people and take half of the profits that we made over the past 2 years at worst. And honestly, listen, it would take 25% of those profits to actually cover them and give everybody there a raise, honestly, because $50,000 a year would be a raise for those 32,000 workers. I can guarantee that. I can't guarantee it, but I damn near guarantee it. I haven't looked it up, but I'm almost certain. It's hard to say because they just said 32,000 workers. They didn't say which specific workers they're targeting there, but we all know who they're going to be. They're going to be the lowest wage workers, and the lowest wage workers are below a $15 minimum wage right now. So it's really gross, and I just wanted to make sure we called some attention to it so that folks know and see that these are profitable businesses. They don't have to do this. Disney doesn't have to do this, all right? There's nothing that says that they have to do this. They're doing this because out of just greed, and they're making money off of Disney Plus right now, and that's the thing that, as in instances like this, they're very happy to move money to these sort of digital realms where it requires, less workers, less low level workers that they have to worry about. The less workers, the less chance for things like unionization to take place and people to be able to build collective power. So they're really happy to shift power away from those workers and towards these sort of digital streaming services and less, the less physical. And of course, those services are doing well just because we're in the midst of a pandemic and people are stuck inside more. And so they're doing things like watching TV more. So they're happy to make these shifts, and it's all in the name of profit and not out of certainly not because they have to do this. They don't have to lay off these 32,000 workers. They certainly have the money to afford to continue to pay these workers. Like we said, if they pay 32,000 workers, 100,000 a year each, then they could, they can cover that for $3.2 billion. All right. So they could definitely do it. And it's a damn shame that they are not doing that. And that's not what those workers would really be getting paid. And we all know that, right? Sadly, that's not what those workers would be getting. Anywho, so. All right. Just wanted to cover that. Let's keep cruising along to our next story. All right. And for anyone just joining us, if you haven't done so already, please hit the like button down below, subscribe to the channel, and share this out far and wide. Do we have any comments that we want to take real quick before we jump to the next story, or we can keep cruising along. Luis or Louis S says, yup, currently furloughed by them. Oh, wow. Damn, Luis. So I don't know if it's Luis or Louis S, but somebody viewing right now is currently furloughed by Disney right now. I'm so sorry. I am so sorry to hear that. Right now, honestly, furloughing in a situation where we had a strong social safety net, people were guaranteed to be taken care of by unemployment. If unemployment wasn't this short-term, unstable program where you're constantly having to, I've been on unemployment for the past year and been, kicked off and had to reapply multiple times, switching between pandemic unemployment insurance and regular unemployment insurance, depending on which state you're in. You're getting less. You're getting less money, from the regular unemployment. Anyways, many people were relying on that extra $600 a month. I know that was like life changing for me, essentially, to be able to get that, or at least life saving to a lot of people. And so that's horrible. And so I'm so sorry to hear that. And it shows that's how wide this thing, it affects so many people, that we would even have somebody, in our audience, in our small audience that we have here right now, hopefully growing audience over time, that's impacted directly by this. And so, in furloughed right now means when you get furloughed means that your job is technically still there as soon as they call you back. But as you can see, they can suddenly up and decide to terminate people that were previously furloughed. I know someone that was furloughed by IKEA, and then they were, eventually terminated. People that were, have been pushed out of work because of the pandemic, and then not ever able to return to those jobs. So, I'm sorry to hear that, Louis. And, I hope that you're, at least able to stay on, unemployment right now during this time, and then hopefully get to return to work. I wish that they would, keep all of you whole. They absolutely can afford to do so. And it's awful that they're treating their workers like this, when the workers are the ones that create all the value in the company. They produce all the value in the company, and then they get treated like this, and they don't get a say in this. They don't have a fair say. It's just a handful of people, the board of directors and the major shareholders of Disney, that get to do all this decision making, and they get to decide for all these tens of thousands of people. They get to decide, the outcomes of their lives. And I don't think that that's a fair system. And I find it to be gross and, deeply troubling that because these things happen every 4 to 7 years on average. Capitalism has a crash. There's some downturn of capitalism, whether it's a recession, a depression, a crash, a downturn, whatever they want to call it. The bubble bursting, whatever they call it. It's millions of people are thrown out of work and suddenly have to navigate these complex welfare systems that we have, that are inadequate welfare systems as well, and don't keep people whole and don't take care of working families. So it's really painful to see. And when I see this, it's just someone like CNN, and you see in the CNN article, they don't question this in the CNN article. I mean, they just present that as if that's just acceptable, or that's not outrageous. No, we should be outraged by that. Like, this is a highly profitable, multi-billion-dollar corporation. They are the most capable of affording this. It's the small mom and pop businesses and little tiny stores that don't really have the means of staying afloat during this. But Disney, they made, again, over the past 2 years, $7.5 billion profit. They could 100% take care of these people, and they're just choosing not to. So should I do I need to read any more, or are we just
we have some for the show.
Okay. Shin says, to be fair, it's not Disney's fault that we are in a recession. Certainly, Shin, to be fair, it's not their fault that we're in a recession, but it's certainly their fault that they're laying off these 32,000 workers. I'm not saying it's Disney's fault. I don't care to point fingers or blame who's in a recession. It's capitalism's fault that we're in a recession. Everyone knew this. This is how capitalism works. The thing is, if we know that there is going to be economic downturns every 4 to 7 years on average, then it is the responsibilities of these capitalist corporations to save money, not count that as profits that they can go dispense as dividends to these major shareholders. They can't go dispense, these so-called profits when they're not really profits. What they were people working. People worked for that money to create that value. Workers worked for that money. They're the ones that created that surplus, created that value, and they're the ones that need it right now. And instead of those people that worked for it and created that value, getting that money when they need it most in the middle of a pandemic, it is absolutely Disney's fault for casting those people aside, kicking them to the curb and turning their backs on them so that they can just pay out dividends and start and focus on Disney Plus. When those workers are the ones that created that profit, they did the work, they created the profit, they absolutely should maintain their jobs and keep their jobs. So sure, it's not Disney's fault that we're in a recession, but it is their fault that they choose to structure their business as a capitalist business that is an employer-employee based business where they have, a set of, a handful of employers, and the masses of people are the employees who have no say. The workers didn't get a say, and those people had decision-making power. They got to decide what to do with those profits. It wasn't the workers didn't get a vote or a say in what happened with the profits. It was that board of directors and those shareholders that got a say, and they decided that they wanted to dispense that as dividends and pay that out to shareholders to pocket to go buy an extra yacht, when really these people, we had a crash coming right around the corner. Folks like Dr. Richard Wolff, Cornel West, David Harvey, Harry Fraud, Stephanie Kelly, people, the list goes on, have been saying, listen, we're on there is a crash of capitalism coming, because it always comes, and we have to prepare for that. And we knew that it was overdue. We were overdue since 2008, 2009. It had been nearly 10 years. And the reality is that what we also know from history is that the longer the sort of recovery period and goes, usually the harder the crash at the end of it, right? So the fact that we had 10 years of so-called recovery after the 2008-2009 recession means that we should have been expecting not just any regular, just a regular crash, but a massive crash, because we knew ever since Donald Trump, go look at the stock market graphs, right? And ever since Donald Trump got elected, it was kind of steady under Obama, and then Trump gets elected in 2017 and starts, just doing everything that the markets love, just funneling money to the rich. That's how we had the K-shaped recovery, and you'll see it just goes up and up and up, and that's all. It's all it's been inflated. It's been falsely inflated. The stock market has. And we knew that this was all coming. We knew this crash of capitalism was coming. And it's only because the feds are, injecting trillions of dollars into the markets to prop it up right now that we haven't had stock market crashes as well, because the government is taking on that debt from these corporations. They're taking on corporate debt, and they're buying up that corporate debt. So all these corporations that did all this risky behavior, they're now being bailed out, while working class people like Louis are stuck furloughed and not knowing. I think it's Luis. Okay, Luis. Sorry. So like Luis are being furloughed and being have been cast aside with no say whatsoever. They didn't decide that. That's not, if they got a vote in that if it were Democratic, they should have had a say in that. And that's how I would I want to see all businesses structured. So even businesses where you have a union, you just don't you don't have the same bargaining power as simply giving it direct democracy. So, all right. Any more comments we want to get to? No? Okay, let's keep pushing along. Next story up is we're going to talk about Comcast. So from one greedy corporation to another. All right. So let's talk about Comcast. All right. This is a great one. So Comcast has recently come out and announced that they are going to be implementing data caps starting next year. And those data caps, so what that is that once you're streaming something online, or you're using the internet in any way, there's data being sent over the network, and that for watching a movie, you may use up gigabytes. Your a high definition movie requires gigabytes of data. Right now, for some companies, they've removed data caps, and data caps are by and large a arbitrary thing that are set. The companies it's not really costing them more to provide that bandwidth for their customers. But so many companies don't have data caps. Verizon, for instance, doesn't have a data cap, so you can use unlimited amount of data because they know it's not really. And I come from the tech industry. I've built these some services like this, and so I know that's one of the cheapest things that you can utilize. And so we got Comcast, who is taking subsidies from the US government while simultaneously they are proposing these caps, being placed on. So they're taking money from us to then turn around and use that money to more efficiently, screw over their customers. All right. So let's take a look at this article. This is published in the Daily Poster by David Sirota, former speechwriter for Bernie Sanders during his 2020 campaign. David Sirota, an amazing investigative journalist. So let's take a quick look at this article from his Substack, again called the Daily Poster. All right. So Comcast new data fees follow $1 billion in public subsidies. The government-subsidized telecom giant is imposing new levies on customers who are more heavily reliant on the internet during the COVID lockdown. This is by David Sirota and Julia Rock. With millions of Americans trapped at home to protect themselves from a deadly pandemic during the holiday season, the internet is one of the only conduits connecting them to friends, family, and the outside world. Now, Comcast, one of the monopoly corporations that controls the conduit, is extending its fees on bandwidth usage to all 39 states where it operates, even as the company has received hundreds of millions of dollars of public subsidies and new tax breaks. Whether or not those data caps remain permanent could hinge on whether President-elect Joe Biden and Democrats are willing to take action against a corporation that has been one of their major campaign donors. Okay, so Comcast has been one of the major campaign donors to Joe Biden and the Democrats. So you ask yourself if you think that they're going to take action against that corporation. At issue is Comcast's move on Monday that caps home internet usage at 1.2 terabytes of data per month for its customers in 12 additional states, and charging customers up to $100 per month if they exceed the cap. Comcast's move was flagged by Stop the Cap, which discovered that the company had quietly updated language on its website. The new limits, which will take effect in March, are being imposed in states that have given Comcast and its subsidiaries more than $738 million in tax subsidies in the last few decades. Those states include New York, Connecticut, and Pennsylvania, where state and local governments have given Comcast and its subsidiaries $484 million, $132 million, and $79 million in tax subsidies, respectively, according to data from Good Jobs First. In all, Comcast and its subsidiaries, which include NBC and MSNBC, have received nearly $1 billion in state and local subsidies. Additionally, Comcast received $861 million in federal tax subsidies during the first year of the Trump tax cuts, according to the Institute for Taxation and Economic Policy. So they received $861 million in federal tax subsidies during just the first year of the Trump tax cuts. All right. So nearly $1 billion in federal tax subsidies in a single year. Sorry, just continuing on from this article. This is why monopolies are bad, tweeted Public Citizen, a consumer advocacy organization. Comcast can arbitrarily exploit us for profit during a pandemic just because it feels like it. Meanwhile, Comcast collects tons of tax breaks and government subsidies. Comcast should be broken up. The FCC recommended in March that internet service providers relax their data cap policies in order to, quote, promote connectivity during the pandemic. The recommendation was attached to an FCC campaign to ensure continued internet service throughout the pandemic called the, quote, Keep Americans Connected Pledge, which Comcast signed. The pledge expired on June 30th. Some pledge that was. All right. So here we have just a shining example of what Naomi Klein, I believe, or was it Nomi Prinz? I think it's Nomi Prinz, actually. So I think it's Nomi Prinz or Naomi Klein who coined the term disaster capitalism. And this is disaster capitalism in action, right? You have capitalists coming in and preying on working class people, because we know who this impacts, right? This is going to be like working class folks, right? That are going to be the most disproportionately impacted, because what's $100 to a wealthy person versus $100 to somebody who makes, minimum wage, right? That could be half of your paycheck, right, for the week. So, or if you're only part-time employed, underemployed as well. So, boom, disaster capitalism coined by Naomi Klein. Thank you for the correction from our super producer, Tammy. So Naomi Klein coined the term disaster capitalism, and that's exactly what we have in play right now, right? This is a corporation coming in and just seeing, hey, there's a pandemic going on right now, right? People are stuck inside. They're forced to use the internet. So what are we going to do? We're going to try to capitalize on that, right? That's the term, right? Capitalize on it. So how do they capitalize on it? They say, all right, we're going to limit people that are using this necessary service. I mean, some people are using the internet right now. You're doing like video conferencing. That's a high bandwidth process, right? So it takes a lot of bandwidth to do video streaming, and you do that when you're, say, at work on a conference call that people are now forced to do remotely. So now people are stuck at home having to use remote conferencing software more than ever. And here comes Comcast swooping in, like the vultures that they are, and they see the carcasses there, and they just swoop in and capitalize on these people that are just stuck in a situation that they're forced into. The government has forced people into it. And this is the really messed up thing, is that the government has forced people into this situation of essentially they did it for public health reasons, but they did lockdowns. They're doing these different government shutdowns. And the problem is they're not keeping people whole simultaneously, right? In other countries, it was so simple. What's the solution to this? Well, the solution was simple. Look it up. And it's not magic. It doesn't take any kind of magic or anything like that, right? It's absolutely just, all you have to do is look at what's going on around the world, right? Germany is a great example, right? They have 4% unemployment, and they've been able to maintain that throughout the course of the pandemic. Why? Because they enacted legislation that said, if you have to furlough your employees, we will cover 80% of the salary, so that you don't have to furlough. You don't have to furlough anyone. You don't have to fire anyone. As long as you, as a corporation, promise us that you will not fire any of your employees, we, the government, will cover at least 80% of their salary. Now, I would cover 90% or 100%, because most of these people are not making enough anyways, right? And what they want to do, I think, there is like have the company cover some of it, or that would be fair. I think have the company cover some, 10%, whatever it is, that would be fair. That would be fine for larger corporations. For smaller corporations, I would say, or smaller businesses, I would say cover it all and let smaller businesses, help smaller businesses stay totally afloat. So, but you could have come in and said, listen, we are going to guarantee 100% of your payroll as long as you promise not to fire a single employee. Don't furlough, don't fire a single person. And we didn't. The government didn't step in and cover people. So sure, these corporations are terrible and they're greedy and they're awful. But so are the companies, right, that do this as well. I mean, so is the government that has left these people out hanging out to dry as well, right? But in this case, this is a situation where you just have it's just raw greed, right? It's how do we extract more? Now, they already have these crazy fees, and they monopolize. It's a monopoly as well, which we have to recognize. Like, I'm lucky. I'm one of the lucky ones. I live in, suburb of Boston where we have municipal broadband, and we don't have to pay into Comcast. This isn't going to impact me directly, fortunately. This won't impact me directly, but it's going to impact so many people I know, because here in Massachusetts, Comcast is the main vendor of internet, for internet access. So they're the main internet provider, is Comcast, and this is going to impact a ton of people, not just here in Massachusetts, but around the country. And so, and it's just gross because they're doing this in the middle of a pandemic. They're making sure that they again, just like vultures, they just swoop in during a time when people are forced into a situation, right? So this should be illegal. They shouldn't be able to do this. They should just simply, the government, the FCC should step in and say, ban data caps. Just ban data caps. Say you cannot, it's like, putting water limits into people's homes. Like, they can't throttle the water that's coming into your house, right? Or the electricity. Like, they shouldn't be able to do that. If you go over a certain amount of electricity, imagine them saying that, like, if you used more than X amount of water this month, we're going to stop any, we're going to throttle it, or, charge you these exorbitant prices, right? No, we have regulations on that, and we should regulate this in the same way. All right. Do we have any comments we want to get to? I think I saw, Luis says, yep, my dad's a cable man for Comcast. Wow. Luis is like connected. Luis, like, that's wild. Employee of Disney, dad's employed by Comcast, right? Like, this is a big employer as well, too, right? This is a major employer. New York at one point, I think, was fighting against him and almost had formed a worker cooperative. I want to find out what's going on with that, actually. But that's wild, right? Like, Comcast is not just a provider, but also an employer as well. And I guarantee you, again, you give the workers a vote on that, and the workers would not vote to suddenly impose data limits on themselves, right? It's because that's going to affect the workers too, right? Because the workers are by and large going to end up being in states where Comcast is a provider, right? If they're working for Comcast, they're in a state where Comcast is a provider, which means they're likely to have Comcast as a provider because Comcast monopolizes on this, right? They literally work out deals with Time Warner, and I forget, Clear Channel, I think, is the other one. And they work out deals to make sure that they've said this. I'm not making this up. That one of their CEOs was on video talking about this and saying, listen, we're not going to step on the toes of Comcast. Like, it was from Time Warner. They were like, we're not going to step on Comcast's toes over here, and we stay in our lane, which is monopolies and like price fixing, essentially, that they do. And so they allow these sort of monopolies to take hold in certain areas, and then people are forced into a situation where all of a sudden you have no choice. And the government is supposed to regulate on this stuff. Let's be real. This is the place where the government's supposed to step in. But what do we have for a government? Joe Biden, who Comcast is a major donor to his campaign. This is where who are your donors matter, right? If it was Bernie Sanders that we got in there, we know Bernie Sanders wasn't taking money from Comcast. Bernie Sanders was taking money from the people that would have been impacted by Comcast, right? So we know whose side Bernie Sanders was on. We know we should also, for the same reason, know whose side Joe Biden is on, right? He was the former senator from MBNA, which is like this, like investment corporation, right? Like credit card corporation, bank, and from Delaware, where it's like where all the like corporate, it's like a corporate stronghold. All these corporations. I've started a corporation, and what advice did they give me? Form the corporation and incorporate in Delaware. So my business, I have a business that's incorporated in Delaware, because a capitalist told me to, and it was a capitalist business that I had started, and so I incorporated in Delaware. Why did they tell me? Because they said that, one, the laws are very friendly to corporations, they told me. The court cases are not decided by a jury, but rather by the judges. And the donations, when you form the certain type of corporation that I formed, an S Corp in Delaware, the donations can be made, your investment can be made anonymously. You can have anonymous donors to your business. So for all those reasons, they said, start your business here, for things I didn't understand at the time. So this is gross. It's just another example of yet another greedy corporation taking government subsidies to turn around and screw over the public while not being regulated by the government. Like, we've lost control of our government at this point. This is not democracy. This is not what democracy looks like, folks. Like, this is not what democracy looks like. You go to a protest and you hear them chanting like, this is what democracy looks like. This is not what democracy looks like. This right here. Like, you got people, you got corporations taking public subsidies. They're taking money from the government, taking tax breaks and billions of dollars in subsidies from states and from the federal government, from city, states, and the local governments. And then they turn around and they use that money to more efficiently, they spend that money literally figuring out how to more efficiently screw us all over as customers of these businesses. I've been, for most of my life, I've had Comcast as my internet provider. And I've, faced and dealt with those data caps before. They used to have a 250 gigabyte data cap on them. And they would throttle your internet after that. And I've dealt with that before in the past. So just another example of a greedy corporation screwing people over. This is what capitalism does. So any comments we want to get to here? Luis says they originally paid their employees more for COVID because my dad works inside people's houses, but they stripped that away when they found out nothing changed. Yeah, that's wild, right? Like these people should be getting hazard pay. There was a country, I think it was Denmark, recently passed a law that said that hazard pay is 1.5 times your standard pay. So they just made it across the board. It's a time and a half, right? If you're out there risking your life, time and a half doesn't cut it to me. It should be double time for me. Like, these people getting hazard pay, every essential employee, every person working in the midst of a pandemic should be getting hazard pay, because that is a hazardous thing for somebody to do. There's definitely hazard there. People are dying. Amazon workers are dying. People are, all kinds of, Walmart workers, all kinds of, people, Target workers have died from COVID-19 right here, nearby. And so you got people, workers are dying from this thing, and people deserve hazard pay. But what did they do for most of these companies? They gave a little bit of hazard pay, like, a $2 increase for a couple of months. And then as soon as they realize, oh shoot, this is going to take a lot longer because the government isn't doing anything, and we're just letting people just go on about their business and just, because we're worried about, the economy more so than people's lives. So we're not willing to keep people whole during the midst of a pandemic. And this is what they did to folks. So, yep. All right. So I want to give a shout out because I saw that we got a tip on coffee. I got the alert. So I just want to give a shout out to What Up America. Thank you so much, What Up. Big shout out to What Up America, who made the theme song for this show. If you hear that theme song that we play at the beginning of the show, that was What Up America. Love and appreciate you, comrade, truly. So thank you so much for the tip there. I'm really bad at figuring out these things. It's a $3 tip. Thank you so much, What Up, for that. Deeply, deeply appreciate that. Every dollar counts, and we appreciate that so much. So thank you so much to Ian, aka What Up America, for that tip. Just can't thank you enough. Can't thank you enough. Appreciate the support to everyone. Really, really appreciate that. So thank you. All right. And to anyone that hasn't done so already, please hit the like button, subscribe, share this video out. Thanks to What Up America I saw you, posting on Twitter and sharing out and recommending the show to folks on Twitter. We appreciate the hell out of that. So thank you so much for that support. It means so much to us. All right. I'm going to keep cruising along. Next story up. Oh, yes. Okay. So, and you can support us on Coffee, ko-fi.com/radical democracy. Please, I really need you to do it. If you can afford to do it, I need you to do it. It just for $1 a month, as low as $1 a month, sign up, become a member of the show, essentially, and just sign up on Coffee to support monthly. $1. You can leave a one-time tip on Coffee as well, just like What Up just did, just a one-time tip. What Up's also a regular subscriber as well, a monthly donor, and just drop in where they can. So that's just deeply appreciated, because I know times are tough right now for everybody. Times are tough. And if you can't afford to do it, do not worry about it. Our other comrades do it so that the folks that can't afford to, they don't have to, right? So don't worry. Don't feel bad about that. Please don't feel bad. Don't feel guilty. Nothing like that. We know it's rough out here, and that's why we just deeply appreciate everyone that is able to support in that way. All right. So Next story up, we're going to talk about Neera Tanden. But before I do so, I need to take a sip of something because I wish it was alcoholic, but it's not, unfortunately. Okay. Sorry about that, y'all. Sorry, not sorry. People need to drink. All right. Hydrate yourselves, y'all. Drink some water. Everybody drink some water. Stay hydrated. All right. All right. Next up. Okay. So let's talk about Neera Tanden, right? I mean, whew, boy. So Neera Tanden has been nominated by Joe Biden to be the chair of the Office for Management and Budget. And Neera Tanden, for folks that are not familiar, I mean, if you're online, you pretty much know Neera Tanden. If you're online, especially if you're online and you're on the left, you know Neera Tanden, and you don't know her in a nice way, right? Neera Tanden is essentially, I don't know how else to describe her except as an online troll. She was a Hillary troll who just went out there and spit in the faces of progressives constantly. She talks down, she tears down all progressive legislation. She attacks progressive legislation and attacks progressives, progressive legislators as well as their supporters. So she was very hostile towards Bernie Sanders and the Bernie Sanders campaign. It went so far as Bernie having to, draft a letter against her during the campaign. We'll take a look at that. But this was seen by, this was quoted as being a quote, gift to AOC and the AOC wing of the party. So Biden considered this somehow, Neera Tanden, a gift to AOC and the AOC wing of the party, the so-called AOC wing of the party. And I don't even know if that is gaslighting or just, I don't even know what to call that. I don't know what to call that. But I couldn't name a single person more hostile to the so-called Bernie or AOC left-wing base of the party. I could not name a single person more hostile to them. Maybe Hillary Clinton herself, but not even Hillary. I couldn't even say Hillary. Hillary's not as hostile towards that base as Neera Tanden. Nobody. No, I can't name a single person. It's kind of side note, really quick aside. It used to be Neera Tanden and Peter Dow, which is wild. I used to be able to say like Neera Tanden and Peter Dow were so hostile towards the Bernie left, but it's just wild how far they've diverged, right? Like Peter Dow is like a full-on socialist at this stage. Like, he is an actual leftist. Would love to have him on the show at some point, actually, to talk about his journey from the centrist sort of establishment wing of the party to the actual left, truly progressive, although I now hate that term, wing of the party. So yeah, but it's just wild to see how far they diverged. Neera Tanden has stuck right with it, and she has maintained that throughout. So she actually, after she was nominated, she deleted about 1,000 tweets of hers, literally deleted like over 1,000 tweets of hers that were hostile towards the left, some towards like Republicans that she was going to have to work with just a little bit, but mostly, 90% of it was hostility towards the left-wing progressive base of the Democratic Party. And she went through and just like did a mass deletion of her whole history. But people remember, right? Like Pepperidge Farm remembers. All right. We remember Neera. All right. So let's take a look. Let's see. We're going to look at first, I just wanted to show somebody that will break it down far better than I can. Brianna Joy Gray, who we love to highlight on the show, was recently interviewed on Democracy Now! About this pick of Neera Tanden for the Office of Management and Budget. And she spoke on that. Just to clarify here, Office of Management and Budget, obviously that's the office responsible for helping they interface with Congress, with the House and the Senate, in order to work on budgeting for the executive branch, for the administration, right, for the Biden administration. So she would be one of the most powerful decision makers on budgeting issues in the Biden administration. And the person that she has to interface with the most is in the House. They have a Ways and Means Committee chaired by Richard Neal, who's a corporate Democrat. That's who Alex Morse ran against, and unfortunately was unable to beat. But hopefully Alex Morse will be back to whoop his ass in a future election. Please come back, Alex, and get rid of that corporatist dirtbag Richie Neal. And so Richard Neal is the chair of the Ways and Means Committee in the House. And then in the Senate, you have Bernie Sanders heading the Senate Budget Committee. He will be either the chair or the ranking member of the Senate Budget Committee. Bernie Sanders is one of the primary people that Neera Tanden is going to have to interface with in the Senate in this role. And you can't tell me to like a person she's been more hostile towards, in the past few years. Like she again, we're going to take a look at, we'll look at, let's take a look at that first. Actually, let's take a look at the letter that Bernie had to draft about Neera Tanden and her center. She headed the Center for, she was on the board of the Center for American Progress. And they're like a Democratic loyalist think tank, essentially. So just like one of these like typical Washington Democratic think tanks. So let's take a look at that letter from Bernie that Bernie drafted during this campaign earlier this year. Oops, wrong one. This is an article about Neera. Hold on, let me grab the. Okay, so this is from April 13th. Okay, this is from actually 2019. Sorry. So this was 2019. Sorry. This is from Bernie. He says, "Dear members of the board of the Center for American Progress and CAP Action Fund, I write to express my deep concern and disappointment with the destructive role that the Center for American Progress and its affiliated Action Fund arm are playing in the critical mission to defeat Donald Trump. Last week, you published an article on Think Progress criticizing me for my appearance and for the income I earned from writing a book. Then, a day later, you published a video that dishonestly attacked me for hypocrisy in my effort to address income inequality in America, a video that was excitedly discussed on many conservative websites." The next part that he talks about, honestly, technically, I don't disagree with what they did next here, but he says, "Sadly, I'm not the only candidate in the 2020 field who has experienced personal attacks from your institution. My friend and colleague, Elizabeth Warren." Oh, wait a year, Bernie. You'll see. Just wait a year. You'll find out how much of a friend and colleague Elizabeth Warren was. But anywho, he says, "My friend and colleague Elizabeth Warren was unfairly targeted by a November 2017 article on Think Progress that echoed Donald Trump's bad faith claims that she was being a hypocrite about her ancestry. She was. That attack was linked on the Drudge Report and immediately immersed her into a rather unhelpful debate, a debate that should have happened. Again, in October 2018, you published an article stating that she was hurting Native American people. She was. That's not all. In February of this year, an article on Think Progress attacked another friend and colleague of mine, Cory Booker, for moving in a progressive direction and joining with me on a prescription drug importation bill." So that's actually Cory Booker was moving left, and they Think Progress is out here, which is an arm of the Center for American Progress, that they were attacking Cory Booker for moving left in accepting and supporting a prescription drug, the importation of prescription drugs. I'll continue reading on from this letter. "Center for American Progress leader Neera Tanden repeatedly calls for unity while simultaneously maligning my staff and supporters and belittling progressive ideas. I worry that the corporate money CAP is receiving is inordinately and inappropriately influencing the role it is playing in the progressive movement." Absolutely. I and other Democratic candidates are running campaigns based on principles and ideas and not engaging in mudslinging or personal attacks on each other. Meanwhile, the Center for American Progress is using its resources to smear Senator Booker, Senator Warren, and myself, among others. This is hardly the way to build unity or to win the general election. I will be informing my grassroots supporters of the foregoing concerns that I have about the role CAP is playing. Should your actions evolve in the coming months, I am happy to reconsider what kind of partnership we can have. All right. So, there you have Bernie talking about how, I love that he called out the fact that they're receiving this corporate money and that is definitely influencing them, that they are, and how he says, Neera Tanden, she loves to, talk about unity, but it's always unifying into their, they want you to unify into their, into their ideology. As long as you're agreeing with them, sure, that's the unity that they're okay with. But as soon as it benefits them, they're willing to smear and attack progressives because they're hostile towards the progressive wing of the party. These are centrists at best who are hostile towards the progressive wing of the party. And look, like Bernie was out there campaigning for Joe Biden like it was nobody's business, right? Like Bernie was out there. He campaigned. He did more rallies than Joe Biden himself. He campaigned for Joe Biden. Honestly, I think Bernie worked harder to win the presidency for Joe Biden than Joe Biden worked. Okay. So Bernie was out there doing the most against my own, that's not what I would have recommended for sure. Not until he got some real promises, like, come on, for instance, not putting Neera Tanden as your main liaison to Bernie Sanders in the Senate Budget Committee, like somebody who's hostile to Medicare for all, Green New Deal, but any federal job guarantee, any $15 minimum wage. Like she's proposed cuts to Social Security and Medicare before. She's talked about that, negatively speaking about it in the language, entitlements. And so, come on, he got, not only did we have progressives gotten nothing so far for all the work that they did to help Joe Biden get elected, but it's honestly, this whole cabinet has been one big fat middle finger in the face of all the progressives, in all of the left. So where's the pushing Joe Biden left? He's staffing up and he's stacking his cabinet full of people that are hostile to the labor movement, hostile to working class people, hostile to the policies that are popular policies, not just in the Democratic Party, but they are wildly popular in the Democratic Party, but popular amongst the entire American populace. Like you're talking about Medicare for all, that has majority, support amongst even Republicans, okay? Even Republicans with independents and of course, overwhelming support with Democrats, 88% in a Hill Harris X poll that they did over the summer. Medicare for all had 88% amongst Democrats, 66% support amongst all Americans, right? So majority support amongst all Americans. And these are the people that are hostile to what we all want. But, we were told by all these progressive groups that we gotta, suck it up and just go fight for Biden. And then we'll worry about pushing him left after he beats Trump. Well, you know what? They've called this election. The election's been called. Trump's been beaten. He's the president-elect. Joe Biden's the president-elect. He's staffing his cabinet up right now. When are we going to start? When does the pushing Biden left start? Because what I see from Biden so far is, again, just a big, huge middle finger to the left and to the progressive wing of the party and to these people, these groups. Bernie Sanders, Sunrise Movement. We covered Cedric Richmond, who I swear I thought his name was Cedric Richmond. I heard somebody say Cedric Richmond, and I've been calling him Cedric Richmond. I guess his name's Cedric Richmond, which I thought it was in the first place, but whatever. I digress. I'm still going to call him Cedric. But anywho, but here you have, Biden picking somebody that is, I couldn't think of a more, just, a bigger FU to the left than Neera Tanden of all people. Like, all right. So let's take a look at, I don't know why I just spaced out on that. We're going to take a look at Brianna Joy Gray. She had a recent interview on Democracy Now! With Amy Goodman and Juan Gonzalez, and they talked to her about this pick of Neera Tanden for the Office of Management and Budget, and she shared her thoughts on that. So I just wanted to check that out with you, and then we will I have a few clips of this interview that I want to play. So I have 3 clips that I'd like to play in total. So I'm going to probably end up breaking this into 2 segments. I'm talking to myself later when I actually edit this. So I'll probably end one segment there and then cover another segment on Neera, all focused around Brianna Joy Gray's response to, her reaction to Neera Tanden as being selected to this office. Okay. All right. So next up, I want to take a look at Brianna Joy Gray in a recent interview on Democracy Now! With Amy Goodman and Juan Gonzalez. She talked about this pick of Neera Tanden for the Office of Management and Budget, and she had some great thoughts that I thought were important for us all to hear. As always, she is just full of knowledge and covers the, hits to the core of these issues in a way that really I relate to. And so just wanted to share that. Okay, let's take a look at Brianna Joy Gray discussing Neera Tanden this selection.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of talk ever since Biden officially clinched the nomination about the efforts to unify the Democratic Party and his efforts to reach out to the left. And a lot of his moves have been characterized as a kind of soft to the left, while there hasn't been a lot of substance behind those characterizations. So what you've seen in this latest slate of picks is a lot of emphasis on the identity of the individuals picked, a lot of firsts in the group. And even folks with less, shall we say, more attenuated relationships to traditional identity characters have gone as far as to talk about the struggles of their stepfather's family, right? And I think that's very intentional because substantively, several of these individuals have real problems, and none of them truly represents a progressive in the mindset of most Americans, especially those who identified with Bernie Sanders. And Neera Tanden is someone in particular who is very notorious for being openly antagonistic of Senator Sanders, who again represented the largest coalition of progressive voters in this country, perhaps most notorious for physically assaulting Bernie Sanders' campaign manager when he was an employee at an editor at Think Progress, a vertically integrated media institution under CAP.
And Brianna, I'd like to ask you the.
Okay, so first, she talked there about just the, what we've been talking about on the show since these Biden selections started rolling in has been, the media coverage of this has been all about identity over ideology. It's all focused on the identities of the people and not their ideology. So it's like, oh, the first woman or the first, black man, the first black woman, selected to this post, and not talking at all about the actual substance of what these people believe and what kind of policies they're going to put forth in their roles, or what kind of, ideology they'll hold and what they'll actually, do with the power that they hold. And so she talked about that, and just this sort of false unity. It's they act like they've been talking about this, and Joe Biden has said, talked as if these picks that he's made so far have been like a gift to the progressives or to the left somehow, when really, he's called it the most progressive cabinet in history, and in a very progressive cabinet. And there's nothing progressive about these people whatsoever in their ideology. There's not a thing progressive about them. In fact, they've been hostile towards progressives for some of them. And Neera Tanden is a shining example of this. But they'll focus on the identity of these people, of course. And so I thought that was important. And the fact that she said, she's antagonistic towards the sort of Bernie wing of the party. They're not really. I don't like saying that because we're not really a Bernie wing. We don't get behind one single politician. But I think people sort of understand what you're referring to when you say that. So, the Bernie left, the left wing of the party, she's been very antagonistic towards us and towards them. And so, and she's had a massive online presence. And so it's impossible that they didn't know this and weren't aware of this. And it feels like, spitting in the face of the left. So I want to continue on with another clip from this, this interview here. And here she's going to talk about the Neera Tanden's hostility, not just towards the people on the left, but towards the policies on the left, right? So that's important, very important. And she's going to talk about her positions on Social Security and Medicare. And at the end of the clip, we'll actually hear from Neera Tanden herself on this issue. So you're not just hearing this as hearsay, you're getting it directly from the source. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, what's most, the thing I would say what most accurately characterized Neera Tanden in particular is that she is fundamentally a party loyalist. Even her mother has described her as such, as someone who's very aggressive and very devoted, in particular in 2016 to Hillary Clinton. So what we've seen over the course of her career is that she has repeatedly kind of represented herself as open to the kind of moderate, I would describe it as corporate democratic pushes to cut entitlements. For instance, she said in a notable clip in 2012 that entitlements had to be on the table. And that's in stark contrast with this portrait of a woman whose mother very sympathetically relied on public assistance in her youth, and who has used that experience to try to, I think, shield herself against the substantive criticism that she has been open to Medicare cuts, Social Security cuts, and has spoken about these things, even using the language entitlement, in a way that is not at all typical of someone you would describe as progressive, and which is really distressing given the extent of economic crisis this country is in now.
Well, let me go to that comment Neera Tanden made around the issue of slashing Social Security. This is Tanden speaking to C-SPAN after the 2010 midterms.
The Center for American Progress has put forward ideas and proposals to reform the beneficiary structure of Social Security. Some of our progressive allies aren't as excited about that as we are, but we've put those ideas on the table.
So she's talking about her group, the Center for American Progress. Brianna.
All right, so there she is. You heard from Neera Tanden herself saying, that she's, that those things are all on the table, Social Security, Medicare, the so-called entitlements are, and the reason that they're called entitlements, right, are that we should be entitled to them, right, because they are things that, services that we pay into, programs that we pay directly in through our paychecks, right, through payroll, right? You have those payroll taxes, and you see a little line item that's like Social Security or Medicare or Medicaid that you're paying into. So that's why they call entitlements. Of course, that term is used in a derogatory manner where they're essentially saying, oh, these people feel entitled to something, when it's actually that they actually are entitled to it because it's something that you pay directly into. So, but they like to use that term entitlements to sort of in a derogatory way, of course, right? But there we have, you're talking about the person that's going to be in charge of have a major role to play in budgeting, who says, oh, you know what? The way we got to deal with the budget, y'all, is that we got to look at cutting Social Security and Medicare. Social Security, we looked at the 2019 poverty report, right? Social Security was the #1 program that kept people out of poverty in the country. Social Security kept 7 million people out of poverty. I think it was more than that. I think I got the numbers wrong. I think it's even more than that, right? So we, go back, check our coverage on it. You'll see what we covered it. I'm spacing on the exact number. I think it's more than 7 million, honestly. I think it's something like 27 million, in fact. 22 million. Okay. So Social Security kept 22 million people out of poverty in 2019. So it's the #1 program for keeping people out of poverty. And you got somebody on, in the Biden administration, at the highest levels of the Biden administration, on budgeting, saying that that's something that we might need to cut. So we're going to cut that program that is literally the best at keeping people out of poverty. What does that mean? What do you think that means? That means that, okay, 26.5 million for 2019. Okay, so I was right. The 27 million was right. Okay, so it's 26.5 million, right? So sorry about this. It's 26.5 million people were kept out of poverty by Social Security in 2019. All right. So to cut that program in any way means that less people are going to be kept out of poverty. That's what that means. All right. More people will fall into poverty because if we cut a program like that, we should be expanding Social Security, not cutting it at a time like this. You guys know what I advocate for. I advocate for Social Security for all, where we simply lower the age of Social Security from 65 down to 0 and provide a universal basic income, a Social Security program for every single person, right? Just give every single person the money that they need to survive. And so I'm fine with that. It's not my end all be all program. It's not the only thing that I advocate for, but I think that in a time like this, it's proven that we need something basic like that to just hold us over until we can then, fight to get all the rest of the reforms that we need. Me, democracy in the workplace being one of those major ones as well. But I totally support people being provided a basic income. We have basic incomes that exist right now, right? And there, some people are allowed to have a basic income. In Alaska, there's a universal basic income. Every single resident in Alaska is given a dividend every year from the oil. They're given a tax. They're given a check every year from the oil dividends. They have this fund that they use where they invest the money that they gain from oil extraction, and then they share that amongst every citizen in the state. Okay. So we got universal basic incomes, and that's existed for 50 years in this country. All right, I want to play one more clip of Briahna Joy Gray before I go off. But in that clip, she mentioned that, Neera Tanden is a party loyalist. That's what she's known for. She's known, even her own mother has said so. That's what she's known as, a party loyalist. She is a Democratic Party loyalist. She is not loyal to the people. She is not loyal to progressive policy. She is loyal to the Democratic Party. What is the Democratic Party loyal to? Apparently people like Comcast, because that's a major donor of the party. They're beholden to their donors. All right, so let's play one more clip. And this is just going to be Briahna Joy Gray talking about Neera Tanden's position and how she might impact policies like student loan debt cancellation, as well as other progressive policies. So let's take a look at one last clip. This is a shorter one, and we'll just play this and then come back and chat.
The big questions, clearly, especially among young people in this country, is how the Biden economic team will deal with the issue of student debt, which is now into the trillions of dollars. Any sense that you have from these picks so far where the direction of his policies might go in that area?
I'm not overly optimistic. I don't know that, Neera Tanden or any of the others have spoken directly on this issue, but she's someone who, over the course of her career, has emphasized moderation, right? So back when she was working for Hillary Clinton in 2016, she was one of her advisors that was advising her against adopting a $15 minimum wage, something which is hardly some far left radical program. She's on record of having said that we will never have Medicare for all because people are going to be unwilling to let go of their private health insurance. This at a time where I believe we're up to 14 million Americans losing their employer-based health insurance because of the COVID crisis and, of course, unemployment. So in a world where student loan debt, especially in the course of the primary, was still being characterized by the overwhelming bulk of Democratic Party candidates as something that was a far left, inappropriate policy to pursue, and which, even in the context of Joe Biden, is still being framed as something that should be pushed in a very minimalist way, right? He has the power to cancel all student debt on day one, but is talking about canceling a maximum $10,000. Chuck Schumer, some others are pushing for more. I'm not overly optimistic that this policy, which is one of the few that Biden has control over, is going to be dealt with in the maximalist way that the crisis compels.
All right. So that was Briahna Joy Gray one last time, just talking about, not just Neera Tanden, but also Biden's economic team in general as well, and what kind of policies we might expect out of them. And her answer, like mine, is nothing. Don't expect anything that we want, anything that the left wants. Don't expect to get any of those gains. You literally just put somebody that is so hostile towards those policies, in charge of the budget for this administration, you know, that's saying all you need to say to me. That's all the signaling that I need. Like, I'm done. I get all the signals. I've read all the signals and I see where they're going. And we can be out in the streets, but you know, we already know being out in the streets doesn't do a thing. It doesn't shift Joe Biden or any of these people. We were just out in the streets, right? We were out in the streets all summer, right? We were out in the streets all summer long at great risk to ourselves and our communities, trying to protest against, you know, for some sort of basic police reforms. And we've not gotten, there's been, I only know of one single city, Seattle, that has done any defunding of police, and it's been 17%. And that's one city in the entire country, and it's 17%. And I can't name another city or state or any, you know, if any federal program where we've actually done anything to defund, you know, divest that funding from police, defund police. I'm not afraid of that terminology. You see it right there, right? You see it right there. It's there every time. You know, that to Obama and his punk ass talking trash, you know, saying that, you know, oh, you know, you scare people off with slogans like defund the police. No, you scare people off. You know, you scared off people from 1,100 legislative seats with your dumbass centrist policies. Okay, we lost 1,100 seats under Obama. He wasn't talking about defund the police. So what the hell was the excuse for that? All right, it wasn't because he was so progressive that he lost 1,100 seats under his watch, right? No, that wasn't it. It was because their centrist, garbage, neoliberal, centrist ideology and policies that nobody likes, all right, except the corporate donors that they have. And so, you know, Neera Tanden has come out against a $15 minimum wage. She advised Hillary Clinton against supporting a $15 minimum wage, while Biden sits here talking about how he supports a $15 minimum wage. One time, you know, he said it really one time adamantly during a debate. That was the only time I ever really heard him pushing on that. We're gonna see, because under Obama and Biden, when they started their presidency, when they started their administration, the minimum wage was $7.25 an hour. When they left 8 years later, the minimum wage was $7.25 an hour. So they didn't do a damn thing to touch it, not even by a cent. All right, they didn't uplift it by a cent. So I have a hard time believing that they're now going to more than double it under this Biden administration. I hope I'm proven wrong, because it's one of the most basic, obvious policies that must happen at this point. $15, let's be real. We've been talking about $15 since 2016, and even before that, we've been talking about $15 an hour. If we just simply kept up with inflation, the minimum wage would be $22 right now. So it would be at least $22 right now. We should be fighting for at least a $20 minimum wage. I said way back years ago, I advocated for fighting for a new slogan of 20 by 2020, right? So $20 minimum wage by 2020, right? Like, no more of this like $15 by 2025. Like, let's stop that. It's not a living wage right now. It's damn sure not going to be a living wage 5 years from now. So when we get these minimum wage increases, they're often done like incrementally over time, and it's so slow and it takes years to build up to. We need to start to factor that into our fight, and make sure that when we do this and when we start advocating for these policies, that we keep that in mind, that we have to not just think about what is a living wage right now in this moment, but what's going to be a living wage by the time these policies are implemented and then actually fully implemented, right? Because usually it's a stepping up process that takes years. All the while, inflation is happening every year, 2 to 3% inflation every single year on average. So, you know, those gains are a lot less, you know, 5 years from now than they are right now. So we got to start to think about that and start pushing for even more progressive policies. But she's against the $15 minimum wage. She's come out against Medicare for all. Her reason being that she stated because you know, people don't want to let go of their private employer-based health insurance. You know what? People don't have to want to let go of it. People get let go of it. Okay, they get forced off of it. I've been fired from multiple jobs where I get kicked off of the insurance. Okay, you lose your job, you lose your health insurance. All right, I didn't want to lose my health insurance, but I did. All right, I don't want to live under any system where that's possible, where I'm forced to go work for somebody just to be promised the possibility of being taken care of if I get sick. That's disgusting. Okay, it's disgusting. It's inhumane. It's immoral. All right, to say I have to go belong to somebody, I have to go be a wage slave for somebody in order to just deserve health insurance. All right, to just deserve for my kid or myself to be taken care of if we get sick. Only if you work for us, only if you work for some corporation. That's the only way you can get that. So, and we also didn't mention from that first clip, she also talked about how Neera Tanden had once pushed, she actually punched the, reports say, they've been, changed and altered over time. So she says that she pushed him. People that were there say she punched him in the chest. Why? Because he went up, during a Hillary Clinton, town hall sort of thing, he asked her a question about her stance on the Iraq war because she had supported it previously. This was before Faz Shakir was the campaign, one of the co-chairs of the Bernie campaign. This was before that. This is when he was working for Think Progress, which was they're under CAP, Center for American Progress. Bernie mentioned Think Progress in that letter that we read, but she assaulted Faz Shakir. She assaulted this person because he had the audacity to question Hillary Clinton about her stance on the Iraq war. I mean, that's just so basic. And we should be pushing these politicians to make sure that they never make those mistakes ever again. All right. But I thought that was all great, great analysis by Brianna Joy Gray. As always, nobody does it better than her, really. And so I just wanted to highlight this. This is just a real just spitting in the face of the left, and really shows that they have no intention whatsoever of, doing anything that is, being progressive in any way. They don't plan to implement progressive policy. They will be hostile towards all the policies. And I just really, I keep looking. I will continue to ask this question. How do we push? How do you push Biden left? How do we win progressive policies? If the answer now to all these people that said that they were going to push Biden left after we elected him, how do you push him left? Where's the pushing? When does it start? When do we start pushing him left? What does that look like? Because I'm not seeing it. So, all right. What If America says, I think you misspoke. I think that it's that if wages kept up with productivity, we would have $22 an hour. You said inflation. Let me check that. You might be right on that. You might be right on that. That it's actually, if that's kept up with productivity. I want to see if what the rate is when you keep up with inflation. But I think you're actually right. What If America? So I apologize. As you say that, I do think that is actually correct. If wages kept up with productivity, it would be $22 an hour would be the minimum wage. I'm fine with either one. And thank you for the correction. What up? So yes, if wages did keep up with productivity, it would be $22 an hour, not just inflation. So I would love to know what the number is for inflation, though. I think it's over 15 for inflation as well. So, all right. What Up says capitalists also avoid state income taxes by incorporating their business in Delaware because Delaware doesn't tax, quote, intangible assets, in addition to ignoring inevitable economic downturns. Yes, absolutely. Yep. So just yet another reason why, businesses are pushed to incorporate in Delaware, and it's all just to skirt taxes and to try to avoid to use these sort of tax loopholes to avoid having to pay their fair share. So and the bigger the corporation, the more resources they have to do this, the better the lawyers they can hire, the more they just have more means to exploit all of these loopholes. All right, great point. What up? Thank you for the clarification as well. All right. So let's see. What is up next? Okay. Let's talk about. Okay, if you haven't done so already, please do me a favor, do us a favor, and hit the like button down below. Smash that like button down below. Also, subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed, and please hit the share button and share this out far and wide. We deeply appreciate that. If you can afford to do so, and only if you can afford to do so, remember that, only if you can afford to do so, please, we need your support. Support the show on coffee.com/radical democracy. Links are in the description box below. If you can't support us on Coffee, that's ko-fi.com/radical democracy. If you can't support us there, please, but you're on Patreon and you'd prefer to support us there, you can support us at patreon.com/radical democracy. On Coffee, you can leave a one-time tip. You can also become a recurring member, and on Patreon, you can become a member for as low as $1 a month. If you sign up for $5 a month or more on any platform, Coffee or Patreon, we will send you an invitation to our Discord server where we chat, we hang out, we chill. and we talk leftist talk. All right, so great space if you want to have some leftist chat and or you just want to show some solidarity with the show. We appreciate it, deeply appreciate it. All right. So next up, we're going to talk about Biden on, he came out and he said some things, and also, he said some things about, Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. And essentially Joe Biden has signaled that he intends to snub Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren in his cabinet. And so let's just take a quick look at that. First, let's start with let's watch a video. All right. I like video. Prefer that over reading to y'all sometimes. So, okay. Let's take a look at this. This was from an interview that Joe Biden did with Lester Holt on, let me find this. Okay. Okay. One sec. So this is from this clip we're going to play is from an interview from NBC News with again a recent interview, Lester Holt interviewing Joe Biden, and Joe Biden shared some comments, some thoughts about both his intentions, his willingness to hire Republicans into his administration versus his willingness to hire certain progressives into his administration. And so I just wanted to take a listen, and then we'll discuss. All right.
I want this country to be united. The purpose of our administration is once again united. We can't keep this virulent political dialogue going. It has to end. It has to end. We have to unite the country, and in order to unite the world, to unite our allies and our friends. And so there are a number of really qualified Republicans for positions that could be serving in my administration.
Should we expect an announcement?
No.
Not ever or not soon?
No, not soon.
Okay. What about former rivals from your own party, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren? Have you talked to them about cabinet positions?
Well, I've talked to them. Look, as I said, we already have significant representation among progressives in our administration, but there's nothing really off the table. But one thing is really critical. I'm going to need forceful leaders in the Senate and in the House of Representatives because we have such very close margins now. And so taking someone out of the Senate, taking someone out of the House, particularly a person of consequence, is a really difficult decision that would have to be made, and it would have to be made in consultation with the minority leader, hopefully the majority leader if we win the 2 seats in the United States Senate in Georgia, and the Speaker of the House, because I have a very ambitious, very progressive agenda, and it's going to take really strong leaders in the House and Senate to get it done.
So it's a political calculation.
Yes, it's not based on my lack of respect or my lack of confidence in the ability of Elizabeth Warren. She's one of the brightest people I know, fully capable of doing a number of jobs, and the same with Bernie Sanders.
The head of the GSA yesterday unlocked.
Okay. So there you have Joe Biden saying it himself, and in the reasons he gives some sneaky politician answers that we'll break down. But he says that, first he starts out by talking about how he's trying to unite, and he wants an administration that's going to unite. And look who he's talking about uniting with, right? He's talking about uniting with Republicans, right? The folks that we just said were monstrous and were, that Noam Chomsky has described as, falling off of the political spectrum because they're so far to the right at this point, the Republican Party. And Noam Chomsky talks about how they're a party that's hell-bent on the actual destruction of the planet and the people on it. And somehow we want to unite with those forces but not unite. Let's just look at what's happened with the picks in this administration so far. There's been no, showing of unity with actual left wing, progressives, with actual progressives or leftists, right? So he talks about having a very progressive agenda. You know, he has a very progressive agenda, but he's not hired a single progressive into his cabinet thus far, right? And he says that he can't, you know, the reason that he gives for why he can't, you know, hire Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren into his administration is he says, oh, well, you know, the Senate, you know, it's the Senate, right? We gotta protect the Senate. We gotta make sure that we have these progressives in place in the Senate, right? Well, let's be real here. There's a couple of things about that. For one, let's just make one thing clear. If you hire, for instance, if he hires Bernie Sanders, that's in Vermont. Vermont has a Democratic governor. The rule is that the governor gets to select the new senator and replace the senator if a senator leaves their position, right? If they vacate their position, then the governor gets to select a new senator. Okay, well, you got a Democratic governor. Have the governor, who you are, just politics is how they work. Just talk to the governor. Have the governor select another progressive. If you really care about progressives, right? Just have them select a progressive to replace Bernie Sanders. Boom, easy, done. You got another progressive in the Senate, and you got Bernie Sanders as labor secretary, right? A true progressive as a labor secretary. So that's a really easy one, right? That's a super straightforward, super simple one. So the idea that you can't put Bernie into your cabinet because you know you're worried about the Senate. That's false because Bernie could be replaced by a Democratic governor, you know, would replace Bernie, right? Okay, so Bernie would, that's an easy one. That's an obvious one. Bernie would get replaced by a Democrat. All right, so no issue there. Bernie would definitely be getting replaced by a Democrat. In Massachusetts, we have a Republican governor, right? But so technically, right, they could say, oh no, you can't take Elizabeth Warren out of the Senate because you got a Republican governor. Republican governor could replace Elizabeth Warren with a Republican. Oh no, we would lose another seat in the Congress. Except Massachusetts has a supermajority of Democrats in our state legislation, right? So we in our state house we have you know, we're supermajority Democrats. In the Senate, state Senate, supermajority Democrats, right? So we have the power to pass legislation that would say, so that our supermajority in state Congress, right, could pass legislation that says that a governor can only appoint a senator of the same party as the vacating senator. Simple, easy, could pass it in a day, and could guarantee that Governor Charlie Baker is forced to replace Elizabeth Warren with a progressive. They could replace her with, you know, there's a whole host of people they can replace her with, right? And they could replace her with a progressive senator, and allow her to take a position. She could have been Treasury Secretary, right? That's the job she wanted. We all know that's the job she wanted, right? And she just got snubbed by the Janet Yellen pick, of course. So we know there's no chance that Elizabeth Warren is going into the Biden administration at this point. There is 0% chance that Elizabeth Warren gets picked into the Biden administration. There is still some slim, tiny, minute chance that Biden would pick Bernie Sanders. Do I believe that he will? Absolutely not. 100% no, I do not believe that he will. But there's still some tiny little percentage of a chance that he could. I don't think that'll happen, but technically he could, right? There's no positions that he could put Elizabeth Warren in at this point. Nothing that she would want, really. So on the other side of that, right? So not just that. So one, it's a bullshit excuse because we can replace these Democrats with other Democrats. It would be easy to do so, right? We could replace the sitting Democrats with other Democrats, right? And you could replace them with progressives, all right? If that's what you really believed in. So that's one, right? So you could keep your votes in the Senate. But two, the Senate, let's all be real. It is very likely to remain as a Republican-controlled Senate, all right? So with the Senate being Republican-controlled, those positions, having any progressives in the Senate, it doesn't matter. It doesn't freaking matter. They have no power there. They can't do anything. They're not going to get anything done, right? So what's the point of keeping two progressives in a Senate that's deadlocked by Republicans? They have nothing that they're just going to be floating around proposing policies and proposing legislation that gets laughed at and overlooked, right? So there's the likelihood, in all likelihood, we have we're going to have a Republican controlled Senate in all likelihood, because of the Georgia Senate runoff races, right? There's 2 runoff races in Georgia. And if history is any indicator of what's going to happen, even if there's tight races during the general, the Republicans have always managed to win by a comfortable margin in the runoff races. So in all likelihood, and we know with what's set up at this point, I believe my prediction is that the Republicans will pick up both seats. It's either Republicans are going to pick up both seats or Democrats are going to pick up both seats. And I believe that the Republicans are going to pick up both seats. And that's just because of the way the history is proven. And also the fact that everything about this election has been all about Trump, right? This past election was all about Trump. It was a referendum on Trump. They made it all about, it's all anti-Trump. People came out because they hated Trump so much. This runoff election is just not getting the same kind of attention that has, and it's not all hyped up. They don't have anyone to go vote against like that, right? So they've already gotten rid of Trump. Trump's gone, so that's that. Now I think that a lot of people are going to be out to brunch that day. That's all I'm saying. So on that, I just don't think I don't see the point. What's the point? Third thing that I'll say on this is just, if you were so worried about taking, progressives out of the Senate, why did you take Kamala Harris as your vice president, right? Why did you take Kamala Harris as your VP? If you're so concerned about taking people out of the Senate for, taking any progressives out of the Senate. I mean, who just did that report that called, we saw a clip recently. They did a report on Kamala Harris where they claimed that Kamala Harris was the most progressive senator and most progressive sitting senator, more progressive, they said, than Bernie Sanders, which we all know is bullshit. But anyhow, they said Kamala is the most progressive senator based on the policy she supported in her 4 years as the opposition party, where she's not actually had to sign on to any actual legislation that was going to pass. But she still gets the title of being the most progressive senator. And so if you were so concerned about maintaining control of the Senate, making sure that you left those progressives in the Senate, then why did you take Kamala Harris out of the Senate to be your vice president if you were so concerned? So you're not concerned about Kamala Harris coming out of the Senate, but all of a sudden now you're concerned about taking Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren out of the Senate. So you're not concerned about taking this faux progressive, Kamala Harris, who we all know actually agrees with them. She's loyal to, whatever her Democratic donors say she needs to be loyal to. And he had no problem taking her but Bernie and Warren, oh no, sorry. And final thing I want to say on this, honestly, final thing I'll say on this is just, Elizabeth, you stabbed the whole damn progressive movement in the back. And for what? For what? What did you get out of it? I was told she's such a good, it's a political calculation that she's making, and she knows that you can't give up, this power here. She wants to be in the room later, right? She wants to be in the room, and she's going to be in the room, and she knows that that's how power centers really work in the country, right? You want to be in the room, right? But she's not going to be in any rooms, apparently, right? She ain't in the room. So what was that? What did she get? Was it worth it, Elizabeth? Was it worth it? Was it all worth it? Stabbing the entire progressive movement in the back in the moment that we needed you the most. All right. Elizabeth Warren had the power to drop out of the race right before Super Tuesday, when all those, when all the centrists did so, when all the corporatist Democrats did so. We needed our progressive to coalesce together as well, right? And to show some real unity behind a movement, right? But what did she do in that moment? She didn't unify behind the moment. She just proved herself to be the snake that everybody was calling her, and she snaked the whole movement in the back, right? So that's it's just a damn shame to see this. This is what I expected. This is exactly what I expected. Bernie was out there campaigning, busting his ass, running around the country, doing everything, doing the most to get Biden elected, and he turns around and he just laughs in his face, spits in his face, and gives a big fat middle finger to the left, and that's it, and keeps it moving. And I can't wait to see in the next 4 years. I look forward to all the pushing Biden left that happens. All right. Let's get to our final story here. We're gonna do this in 2 hours. We banged out a lot of stories here. All right. So X says Warren toes the line. Is it toes the line with an E? I think the actual phrase, I'm being so pedantic right now, so petty. This is a phrase that often gets done wrong, right? I think it's TOWS, and it's not what we think it is. Like, I know exactly what you mean, and I used it that way. I use it that way often as well. But we see it as like touching your toe on the line kind of thing. But I think it's toes the line as in like pulls the weight for something. Anywho, stupid aside. No, I'm wrong. I don't accept that. Anywho, no, I accept that. All right, we're about to have this debate. Oh, damn. Okay. So
isn't toe the line like you're pretty much like your foot is close to the line kind of thing? Like, I wouldn't understand why it would be towing, like a tow truck tow the line, because that means you're taking.
Yeah. So I guess it is toe, TOE, the line. It appears.
X is
means
correct. X is correct.
Yes, X is absolutely correct. Yes, I apologize, X. I was wrong. You are right. So I'm gonna just shut up next time and just read the comment, huh? Toe the line, phrase of toe, accept the authority principle, accept the authority principles or policies of a particular group, especially under pressure. Yes, absolutely. You are 100% correct, and I'm gonna just shut up next time and read the comment. X, thank you. So X had originally said Warren toes the line. She's a quote capitalist to the bone. That is a quote of hers. She has said that, y'all. All right, she is a capitalist to her bones, and I quote. So somebody like that, when you're a capitalist to your bones, all right, you and I do not agree fundamentally. We disagree fundamentally, because I am a socialist to my bones. All right. Great comment, X, and thank you for even helping me clear that up about towing the line as well. What Up America says, and where was Warren? Did she even campaign for Biden at all? Exactly. Like, she didn't do anything. She just stayed in the same shadows that Biden was in and did nothing. And Bernie was out there. He was out there, man. Bernie was out there doing the most for them all over the country. And look at that. He got, he's getting nothing. And we're going to see. I don't think the left's going to get anything under the Biden administration. I don't think working class people are going to get anything. I don't think we're getting Medicare for all. I don't think we're getting Green New Deal. I don't think we're getting even a $15 minimum wage. As crazy as that sounds, knowing that, Biden has the power to do that. And, we're not going to get student loan debt cancellation. Biden has the power to do that with the wave of a pen. He could enact Medicare for all with the wave of a pen. In fact, we saw a great article from David Day in the American Prospect recently that showed how he could, enact Medicare for all without having to go through Congress, through a provision in the ACA. It allows him to do that. And for states that are experiencing or regions that are experiencing public health crises. Well, we're experiencing a public health crisis right now. And he could absolutely do that using the provision in the ACA, but they won't. We won't get anything. All right. Great point. What up? Thank you. All right. We're going to do our last story here and try to do it quickly so that we can keep this under 2 hours. But last up, let me just see, make sure yes, that is the last story we have up here. So, all right. Next up, we're going to read through an article that I read through that I was, I had to deal with the misery of reading through this article. So misery loves company, as they say. So I'm going to drag you all through this misery with me as well. And I'm going to have to preface this a little bit so that I show that I'm legally authorized. I am morally authorized to speak on this issue. I am interracial myself. So we're going to talk about this article. It was in Washington Post, and it was a writer just glorifying Kamala Harris and her white husband, and trying to expand that out to some sort of like brave, beautiful, symbolic thing, this courageous, symbolic thing that where just glorifying Kamala's husband and interracial relationships in general. And they really highlight a specific type of interracial relationship, which I plan to harp on. But yes, in talking about this in this conversation on interracial relationships, not only one, I am the product of an interracial relationship, right? My mother is Italian, she's white, and my father is Jamaican, he's black. And so I get even more credibility here because Kamala Harris is half black, half Indian, and half Jamaican, half Indian. I'm half Jamaican, half Italian. So we share the same half blackness of being Jamaican, right? And this isn't going to talk about Kamala's parents, but this is going to talk about the interracial relationship that Kamala herself is in. And for that, I'm also involved. I'm technically involved in an interracial relationship as well. So I not with I am in an interracial relationship with a non-white person, with an Asian woman, and so I'd like to speak on this because I think that as a black man in particular, I think there's a lot that I have to say about this. I need to say about this, and so I just wanted to preface it with that, put out my little disclaimer that I get to talk about this because I'm not only a product of interracial, an interracial, not marriage, unfortunately, because my parents aren't allowed to, they haven't been able to get married for reasons they just religiously don't believe in marriage, Rastafarian, and so not married, but product of interracial dating, and then also in an interracial relationship, been in them in the past, for sure, and been in, of course, dated lots of wonderful black women as well, and so, well, not lots of, but for a long time. Okay. All right. So let me get to this story now that I've prefaced it with all that.
Yeah. So basically, the article is extremely cringy. It's basically titled like saying how Kamala Harris's marriage to her white husband, which is not relevant to her position at all. Like, who cares about the second gentleman? It just glorifies how it's a quote unquote monumental symbol for interracial couples everywhere when no one cares. And I haven't even seen Kamala or her husband like emphasize their interracial marriage or anyone hyping it up because it has not been relevant. If you wanted to talk about her identities or interracial relationships in general, you would assume the article would be about her own parents because they created Kamala, who then went on to be vice president. But no, we're going to talk about her irrelevant white husband, Doug, and how he's the second gentleman. How is that in any way relevant? And this is something that, normally shouldn't even be given the time of day, because that was an embarrassing article to read, which Molly subjected me to. But because we're both dating each other and we're in an interracial relationship, I feel like we should probably just put it out there so we can make it clear this is cringy. Stop doing it. Nobody cares if you're dating somebody not in your race. Good for you, as long as you don't shit on your own race or other races for it. You're not special. That's it. Especially when you're centering whiteness.
All right. Okay. Thank you. That's awesome. Yeah. So we're going to highlight this. We'll read through the article and we'll show you what we're talking about. All right. So you're going to read through this with us, and we're just going to respond as we read through with all the sort of cringy things that they do in this article. But let's take a stroll on through. This is from the Washington Post, and it says, for interracial couples, Kamala Harris and Doug Emhoff are a quote monumental symbol. All right. So they're saying this is for interracial couples. So apparently this is for us, right? This is for me And this is supposed to be monumental, a monumental symbol for me, right? Because I'm a part of an interracial couple, and I'm an interracial, I'm a product of an interracial relationship. Wow, this should be so monumental. This should be the most monumental to me. This is exponentially monumental for me, right? So there's Kamala and her husband Doug. Ah, okay.
Feeling so inspired right now.
All right, so and the article is written by Sydney Trent, who we may talk some about at the end there, but we'll see if we have time for that. We'll talk a little bit about Sydney Trent, the author of this article. But all right, so the article reads: on the last night of the Democratic National Convention, Aisha Kozad watched on television as Joe Biden and his vice presidential choice, Kamala Harris, held their clasped hands triumphantly aloft. But her eyes were also on Doug Emhoff, Harris's husband, who was standing off to one side, clapping adoringly. It was clear who was in the spotlight and who was the cheerleader. Kozad was moved because Emhoff was a man so publicly supporting his powerful, ambitious wife, and she was moved because Emhoff is white and Harris is black. So right out the gate, they're just here talking about how, he's a cheerleader. And so we're celebrating like men being cheerleaders for their wives, part of this is gross to me. I'm just like, we shouldn't be celebrating anyone being a cheerleader to their partner. Like, that's not your job. You're just a partner to your partner. You don't need to be a cheerleader to them. But anywho, they really highlight they're so moved because Emhoff is white, Harris is black. So, quote, given the current state of race relations, it's a powerful thing to say that we don't have to accept these roles as society would have us play them out, said Kozad, a 46-year-old African-American woman whose husband, Scott, 44, is white. Okay, so they're quoting a black woman who with a white husband. Okay. We don't have to accept what society says it's comfortable with. We can, in fact, determine our own path. When Harris takes office in January, she will make history as the country's first female vice president, first black vice president, and first vice president of Asian heritage. I don't even know why we're talking about the first black vice president when we already had a black president. Like, it's just a weird thing. It's like, we already got to the top. Why are we now? We're going to celebrate every time they get to any single role. We got to celebrate that, it's the first person in this role. We've talked about the superficiality of these kind of statements in general, but first vice president of, and I notice here, they say she will make history as the country's first female vice president, first black vice president, and first vice president of Asian heritage. Weird that they specified like that she's a black vice president, she's a female vice president, but she's not an Asian vice president. She's of Asian heritage. That was weird to me, because it's like, what, isn't she Asian if she's of Asian heritage? Won't you just say she's the first Asian vice president? But it's like they can't accept that she's black and Asian or something. Like, they just can't accept that. It's like they won't. She just has to be of Asian heritage. But together, Harris, the daughter of Jamaican and Indian immigrants who identifies culturally as black, another weird one to me. It's just like, you don't get to identify culturally, like, whatever. Okay, I guess I accept as capital B black, whatever. Okay, sure. I didn't hear her identifying as black, when she was laughing about, locking people up for weed violations, keeping people imprisoned, leaving black men on death row, even though there was clear evidence, DNA evidence of them being innocent, helping to further the mass incarceration state and promoting slave labor in the prison system in California. But whatever, she identifies as black, so all good. So together, Harris, who identifies culturally as black, and Emhoff, a Jewish entertainment lawyer, represent yet another less heralded first. The first interracial couple at the highest reaches of the executive branch. Okay, so now that, like, the reaches, that talking about reaches, like, this is a major reach right here. Like, they are reaching hard on this one. Like, now it's the first interracial couple at the highest reaches of the executive branch. So now we're celebrating, like, oh, they're interracial and they're it's just okay. Sorry, I'm gonna try to get through as much as I can before I talk about how gross this is all to me. So their union. So they go on to say their union is being celebrated by a small but growing segment of the U.S. population, intermarried couples, who now make up about 17% of new marriages and about 10% of all marriages, according to a 2017 Pew Research report. here we can see this is okay, we'll hear from these quotes from this family soon, but another couple that we can see here. They have a picture. The picture that we're looking at is another what appears to be a black woman with a white man, and they're two mixed race kids. So they go on. So now they're going to quote that family that we just saw. So they say the Harris Emhoff marriage is, quote, really monumental in its symbolism, said Amanda Brown Learman, 35, who lives with her husband, Kyle. So that's black woman Amanda Learman, 35, who lives with her white husband, Kyle, in Tacoma Park, Maryland. It's good for everyone to see that on a national level and normalize it. Dana Tofig echoes the word normalize and then takes it another step. Not only is it the first time you have had an interracial couple at the highest levels of power, but it's a white male who is saying, my black wife's job is so important that I'm willing as a white man to give up my job in service of that, said Tofig, 53, who lives with his wife, Cindy Murphy Tofig, in Rockville, Maryland. He was referring to Emhoff's post-election announcement that he would leave his law firm. So here we are, praising the white man for giving up his job in service to his black wife, who is literally the second most powerful person in the world, essentially. The vice president of the most powerful country in the world, and somehow it's just so amazing. Here's this white man giving up his job, for his black wife. Like, look at his, the sacrifice that the white man is making for this black woman. It's so amazing. We should be so proud of him, so inspired by him. So like the Cozads, the Learmans, and the Tofigs, the vice president-elect and her soon-to-be second gentleman are part of a rare demographic among intermarried couples, those between black women and white men. So all these people that we're hearing from are all one very specific type of interracial couple. They are black women dating white men. And we've got a whole fucking article now dedicated to this. All right. So here we go again. White man, black woman. Oh, it's so amazing. So here are the Cozads. They go on to say, these marriages make up just 3% of all newlywed heterosexual intermarriages in the United States, according to Pew. The most notable example is of Richard and Mildred Loving, whose lawsuit against the state of Virginia led the Supreme Court to legalize interracial marriage nationally in 1967. The largest group of newlywed intermarriages at 42% consists of Hispanics married to non-Hispanic whites. So that could be white Hispanics married to non-Hispanics whites. So that's not even necessarily interracial. Like, it's interethnic, it's not interracial. And we need to fucking clarify, like, Hispanic, and you could be a white Hispanic and marrying a non-Hispanic white. That does not make it an interracial couple, but whatever. Popular culture has since raced ahead of reality. The 1970s television show The Jeffersons debuted the first primetime marriage between a black woman and a white man, Helen and Tom Willis. Roxy Roker, who played Helen Willis, was married to a white man in real life, Cy Kravitz, and the couple gave birth to a son, musician Lenny Kravitz. Okay. The past decade saw an explosion of interracial couples on television, including many on shows by African-American producer Shonda Rhimes. Her hit show Scandal featured Kerry Washington as Olivia Pope, the black risk-taking crisis manager, hopelessly in love with the president of the United States, a white man. Oh, we just love all these black women loving white men. The envelope was... Okay.
Oh no, I was just gonna say you better take Shonda Rhimes' name out your damn mouth, because stop it. She writes good TV shows. Stop simplifying Scandal down as a black woman who hopelessly falls in love for a white man who's the president. Like, yeah, sure, that's part of the plot, but the show's about her. It's about Kerry Washington and her political stuff. I mean, I don't even watch the show. That's all I know, though. Also, my cousin was an extra on that. I'm just saying.
This is like, I'm fine with that. I have watched episodes of the show, but not watched it in its entirety in any way. And it's just a cringy way to describe the show in general. But you see just over and over this celebration of like, oh, it's Black woman, white man. The envelope that was pushed by the Jeffersons has since been licked, sealed, and delivered, said Bob Thompson, professor of television and popular culture at Syracuse University. White men and Black women who marry tend to be older than their same race counterparts and are more likely to have been previously married. Emhoff and Harris, who are both 56, married in 2014, and Harris is Emhoff's second wife. Oh, and here's where it gets really good. They joined some other prominent political couples who have married across racial lines. Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, an African-American man married to a white conservative activist, Virginia Thomas, and Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, a white man married to Transportation Secretary Elaine Chao, who was born in Taiwan, and former Defense Secretary William Cohen, a white man married to Janet Langhart Cohen, a Black television journalist. So here, yes, let's celebrate these folks, right? Let's celebrate Mitch freaking McConnell, right? Like that's who we're out here celebrating, because clearly Mitch McConnell is so progressive and forward thinking, right? Mitch McConnell and Clarence Thomas, right? These are clearly very forward thinking individuals, right? Could you pick a bigger fucking coon than goddamn Clarence Thomas? Like this piece of shit clown. Like that's who we're really highlighting. We're going to really big up the coon, Clarence, the coon Thomas. That's who we're really talking about here. Like this shit just pissed me off. The whole article has just been this glorification of white men dating Black women. Like they should just be, they're white saviors. You know what white men had relations with Black women? Slave masters who raped their Black slaves, right? There were plenty of slave masters all throughout history, right? The idea of like, interracial anything. You could be a virulent racist who literally owned Black people, but you're willing to have sex with them. Like, I don't care. I don't give a fuck. It's so meaningless to me. And I say this as an interracial, as somebody, a product of an interracial relationship, biracial is, even though I could just consider myself Black because I don't get to, I'm Black. I'm fucking rolling around. What do the police think I am? I'm Black. All right. So, but product of interracial, couple, I'm in an interracial relationship. I'm not out here glorifying that shit. When you do this, it's often through a colorist perspective where it's being done in a way that like shits on Black women, essentially. It's like, oh, aren't white women so great? Or here it's like, oh, aren't white men so great? Right. Which is like, oh, look at these great white men stepping aside for their Black wives, and stepping out of the spotlight. Every single person that they name in this whole article are all like, middle class or above people. They're all like they're like one of the good ones. Like these aren't people like that are like from the hood or some shit. Like they're all like bigging up like these like educated PhDs and all these other people, and it's just like, who gives a fuck? Like who cares about the second? I've never even heard the term used before. The second wife. I've never heard that term before. I've never heard them call the vice president's wife the second wife. I've heard of the first wife, never heard of the second wife. I did not know that they use that term. So who the fuck is the third wife? Like the head of the whoever the fuck the third in line is or whatever. Like who's the third wife or the third husband? Like who gives a fuck? I've never heard the term used before, and all of a sudden we're out here caring about the second husband and the fact that he stepped aside and didn't continue work. The dude gets to go take a fucking vacation because his fucking wife is the vice president of the United States. He gets to go on vacation. Like who gives? We're celebrating that. That's some sort of courageous fucking move that this guy made. Like I don't care. Like one, I just don't care. But two, to make a whole article that's all about, oh, aren't these white men so great for dating Black women? Like that's the least fucking thing you can do. You can still be a racist and date a white and date outside of your race. Like you can be racist and have relationships with people of other races. So I don't care. It's just it's the most superficial, least ass thing you could possibly do, and I just don't give a fuck about it. And so to write a whole article about it is just fucking annoying to me. But this is what, like, this is a person that's like, you're a paid journalist. This is what you get paid to do. Like, you have a job and this is your job and this is what's considered news. Is this considered news from, somebody, the Washington Post owned by Jeff Bezos? Like this is the kind of fucking stories that we get out of here. Like instead of covering the actual substance of these people, talk about Kamala Harris and the substance of our terrible policies and how those impact, Black and brown, women or men, in general. Like why are we sitting here glorifying the fact that she has a white husband, instead of talking about the policies. That's what I care. I don't want to talk about the partners of anybody, that like any job. When does it ever matter who the husband or wife of the person? Like, do you care about the partner of the pilot that's flying your plane? Or like, you never hear about, like, I don't care about this stuff. I don't know why we need to glorify this stuff, because it's often done at the expense of some other, margin. Like, it's like, oh, aren't these white men so great? Because apparently, like, I just don't like, I don't even care. I don't even think it needs to be said about like, because as a black man, we also have to talk about the fact that, like, with interracial dating, when they say interracial, and this is something that Tammy has pointed out to me and made me realize, like, when you hear the term interracial thrown around, it often means one of the partners being white, right? Like, that's how that's often recognized. It's like, it's always got to center whiteness in interracial dating, right? Like, we got to center whiteness in there. And so, one that stands out to me. And then it's all, as a black man, I have to say, like, oftentimes when you hear about this, like, interracial stuff, it's like, oh, you'll hear from black men, they'll tear down black women in order to uplift, white women. Often, it's always, usually non-black or lighter skinned, even like lighter skinned black women versus darker skinned black women. So it's often done through a colorist lens, where it's like, the darker the person, the less like desirable they are in some way or something. And so it's already gross, and it's up to like the celebration of interracial dating. To me, it's just so superficial, and it's the least thing. Like, it's the least thing that I care about. Like, oh, these two people from different races are fucking. Like, I just don't. It's not something that needs to be celebrated. Sure, it's great. Go ahead. It's just as good as any other relationship, but it doesn't make you better. It doesn't make you, you're not a pioneer for dating outside of your race. That doesn't make you a pioneer. You're not some forward-thinking person because you're dating outside of your race. In this article, I think I'm done reading the article. We've already run out of time here, so I'm not going to read any more from it. But they talk about, like, just the I don't know. I lost my train of thought there. Do you have any thoughts you want to share on this, Tammy?
Yeah, for people who want to finish reading the article, go ahead. Just letting you know now. It's going to be a rough ride, even worse than what we've heard so far. And the whole point of the article is to, quote unquote, celebrate interracial relationships. But it's not talking about, oh, pro-black women and like being able to find love in all other races or whatever, because they're the most demonized and hypersexualized of all the races, indigenous women as well. But this article is literally saying, oh, with these black women, white man relationship combinations, we're going to focus on uplifting the white men in it because they're doing the bare minimum, but that is so fucking good that we're going to have to applaud it. They're basically saying, like, oh, look at this white man for having the basic decency to even be open to dating a black woman. Wow, congrats, not racist. And then also, wow, look at him. He's a white man who is being supportive to his black partner. Amazing. Who would have thought? He gave up so much. He's so selfless. Wow. No, he just stopped working at his law firm because his wife became the fucking vice president of the United States. He's fucking chilling. Okay? Like, he's gonna kick back and relax. There is nothing about him that is relevant to her job. And if anything, like, I don't even like Kamala or care for her or her policies. But if anything, this article is offensive to Kamala. If I were Kamala, I wouldn't want my name associated with this article at all. And Doug, if you were a real one, you wouldn't want it either. But this type of stuff shouldn't even like deserve attention. But because it's so cringy and because there's so much like just colonized mindset over interracial relationships, especially involving a white partner, you just feel the need that you have to call it out. It's not even something that should be that significant, but because there's so much like mixed race fetishization of like mixed kids, especially, and when you say mixed kids, it means mixed with white. That's what's most valued. And then, if you're black, then technically, obviously, white is the best, in their eyes. So being mixed with white, you're like the epitome of higher status. But even if it's a different race, like any other race, like Asian or Latinx, you'll automatically be considered more exotic or more desirable, usually because you're lighter and because your features will differentiate you from just being black, which is another layer of anti-blackness and colorism. Just is just embarrassing, this whole article. And, you know, reading this, when Kamala was showing me this, it was just like, yo, who the fuck wrote this? Why? Like, you spent time to write this shit and publish it with your whole chest, like you did something. Like you did something good or productive or that was important. No, this is embarrassing. And we try to look up the writer or the journalist who wrote this article, and she seems to be mixed as well. I think she's black and white, and it's like, okay, good for you. You love your parents. Cool, whatever. Kamala has a white husband. Nobody cares. Good for you. Kamala's mixed. She's black and Asian. Awesome, cool. But at this point, we've reached where diversity or representation is not enough. You know, and I'm sure throughout points in history, like even during the civil rights movement and like more modern, there's been multiple points where representation and diversity was like a bigger thing to celebrate. And it was for us, you know, this current iteration as well, like especially when Obama was became president. You know, he was also biracial. He was black and white, but whatever, he's the first black president. But even after that, it doesn't matter, because it's like that's the smallest thing to celebrate now, because what's changing, what's going beyond that. We know that people of color can reach high places or success or whatever. We know that that's possible, even if it's not often enough. The whole point is, what else can you do further than that? That's why the slang term token exists. We know tokens exist. And what does it do? Nothing. You just go along with whatever the majority is, which in this case, we're talking about race and white supremacy. So what are we really gaining from it? And if anything, by glorifying interracial relationships, you're just saying like, oh, congrats, yay, white people want you. Like, it's not new. White people have been desiring and objectifying and, you know, showing any sort of interest in people of color for like all throughout history. It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean anything. And if you're in an interracial relationship, whether it's with a white partner or not, good for you, whatever. It doesn't matter. It's perfectly fine. The only issue is if you're shitting on your own race or if you're shitting on other races. Just don't do that and you should be fine. But because there's shit like this, like, have we not seen those posts about white women or whoever else showing up to Black Lives Matter protests recently after George Floyd with signs that say, stop killing black men, I want my mixed babies? Like, that's offensive. That's objectifying. That's dehumanizing. And that clearly shows what they care about. I like, yeah, no, like, this is just embarrassing. I don't even know what else to say.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with all of that. Yeah, I think that it's really been, I didn't even know what the term colorism was until I met Tammy, actually, sadly. And so Tammy has educated me on a lot of this, believe it or not, because it's just something that I didn't have a language for it per se. Like I had a feeling of this idea that, like, you know, even I've lived in Jamaica where 90% of the people there are black, you know, 95% of the people are black people. But even there's colorism where, you know, they have songs about, and they have terms for like a browning, you know, that's like a brownin is like a light skinned girl, you know, you're brownin. And they'll glorify that, you know, and they put it on a pedestal in a certain way. And what it means is that darker skinned women are seen as somehow less desirable, less attractive. And it does damage. It does damage whenever, and just the fact, and something else that I've learned, you know, from Tammy really, and just talking to Tammy is like, just the way that when, again, I mentioned this before, that when people say interracial, it's almost always implied that one of the partners is white, right? And when you talk about, like, when they say, you hear the phrase, like, you hear it said often that, like, mixed babies are the most beautiful babies, right? People say that all the time. I used to say that shit, right? Like, I was a mixed baby, right? So I would say it to try to, like, gas myself up, right? So it's like, ooh, us mixed folks are the best looking, right? And I'll do this so you can see that beautiful, look at that beautiful face right there, that mixed, this is what, no, okay.
Yeah, I removed that.
So but that's I used to say stupid shit like that, right? And then and so you hear that the discussion of around that, like, oh, mixed babies are the cutest babies, right? People say that all the time, and what they're really meaning is, somehow lightening up, right? By lightening your child, right? That's where the mixed race comes in, right? It's like you're taking this darker thing and this lighter thing, and you're somehow making it better by lightening it up somehow. And so even that sort of language and rhetoric, I'm done with that. Like, I'm past that. When I hear it, I call it out because it's gross. And what it really amounts to is to tear down. Typically, when it's coming from Black men, it's oftentimes done like, oh, Black women are too ratchet and this and that, and like, I want a nice white woman that's like gonna like be more subservient. And even like I've heard it said about like Asian women like being more like, oh, they're gonna be more subservient, they won't be like a Black. I do not fucking subscribe to any of that garbage. Like, it's like, that's just bullshit, right? That's bullshit. And it's damaging to actual, to Black and brown communities. And so I just, this idea of like interracial, indigenous people had a genocide committed against them in this country, and then they were slowly whitewashed over time. They were had their children, forced adoptions into white families, and then over time, just through rape and other means, they slowly whitewashed an entire people, and whitewashed them out of existence through genocide, and again through forced child separation and rape, and that's the history of this country. And so to be out here glorifying like white men for their relationships with any other race of and any other type of women or people, or if it's gay relationships, this article seemed to be all entirely focused on heterosexual relationships, whether it's gay or straight relationships, whatever it is. To be glorifying white men in it is just, it's particularly gross. I mean, I wouldn't want to glorifying white women either. I just released a video recently about, how white women co-founded white supremacy. You can see my take on white women and their role in white supremacy there. So I'm definitely not one of these Black men that is out here like trying to like, uplift white women or try to put them, over, to lift them over Black women in any way, shape, or form. And we got to be careful with that rhetoric. Just something that I want to call out. We're really running up against the time, so we got to end this show. But I just want to thank my super producer for jumping in and for chatting. We're gonna get her on video soon enough. Maybe we can do a fundraiser for that. At some point, we'll do a fundraiser, and we'll get a camera for Tammy so that we can also get our super producer on video. But we got to wait till she's comfortable with that. So we'll work our way up to that, but thank you to super producer for doing all the work, making the show run so smoothly today, and for all the commentary. I think she has one last thing to say before we go.
Yes, quickly. The examples they gave of other political interracial couples, like, if you're trying to convince the audience of supporting interracial couples as like inherently amazing, of all the examples to pick, you picked the worst ones. Clarence Thomas? Really? You even specified his white conservative activist wife, Virginia Thomas. Let's not forget Clarence Thomas, a Black man, Supreme Court Justice, infamously known, along with intertwined with Biden, about Anita Hill, who is a Black woman who he sexually harassed, did he specifically rape her?
Just sexual
okay.
harassment.
Okay, well, he sexually harassed her while he was her superior at whatever, like was it like a law firm or political office that they were working in? And okay, Anita Hill is a black woman that he sexually harassed, and then eventually he, I forget whether he was married to his white wife already or if he later on went on to marry Virginia Thomas. And that shit dragged on so much. There was at one point where Virginia Thomas called up Anita Hill anonymously to try and harass her to stop her from quote unquote ruining her husband's name. And that shit was so embarrassing because then the FBI had to be involved and searched who that call came from, and it was revealed that it was Virginia Thomas. Like, how fucking embarrassing for you. You called up Anita Hill to try and tell her to shut up a black woman about her sexual harassment because you didn't want your black husband to get in trouble for it because you, a white woman, are so entitled to controlling everybody else's fucking, livelihoods and audacity, actions. And then you get fucking caught by the FBI, who is usually in your favor. Like, that's just fucking embarrassing. And also, you know who else, besides Mitch McConnell, has an Asian wife? Fucking Derek Chauvin, the murderer of George Floyd. He had an Asian wife, specifically Hmong, who is, I guess, technically Southeast Asian. Hmong is more like an ethnic group in Asia that is, common in China and Southeast Asian diaspora, and they are one of the more marginalized ethnic groups. And so is their relationship good? Like, why are we not talking about that? It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean shit. Derek Chauvin fucking sucks. He almost killed, did he kill an indigenous man? Or did he almost kill an indigenous man like years before George Floyd? And then he killed George Floyd. And, the bare minimum thing that his that the Hmong wife did was divorce him like within 2 days after the shooting. But the whole point is, like, she still married him before that, and I don't know how that could have been hidden. Some people don't talk about politics or social issues and all that stuff, so you only see the one good side of them. But luckily she did divorce him like immediately. But like, Derek Chauvin, like, really, that's an example right fucking there.
Yeah, no, that's a perfect example of, like, the people that they could name. And that's the thing. It's like, you can be the worst people. You can be the worst person and still, have an interracial marriage. It just doesn't make you a better person in any way, shape, or form. And so it's just so superficial. And it's like, it's the absolute least. And it just doesn't mean anything about you. It doesn't say that you're some forward thinking, some sort of, again, pioneer of any sort. You're not progressive thinking just because you date somebody of a different race. Like, honestly, there are really destructive reasons why you might do that. You might do that because you are racist, and you do it because of the patriarchy. Being a white man, you have patriarchal power. Even if you're a white woman, you have some certain power over men of color, particularly black men throughout history. Emmett Till, that you have this power over black men, and so you can exercise that power there in the relationship. And so the idea that just dating somebody makes you somehow forward thinking or not racist or anything like that is just like absolutely bullshit. It's been proven to be false time and time again. That's why they could only pick these terrible examples, because a lot of people that do it, it's for terrible reasons. It's not because of like some altruistic reason or anything like that. It's just because they're gross people that are fetishizing somebody or something like that. And it's not because there's I'm trying to pioneer and I want to break down a barrier. It's like, no, I just want to get my dick wet in some exotic, whatever. And it's like, that's the thought behind it. It's not some altruistic thought process. It's just a fucking gross, like, oh, I just want to like, dominate this exotic being, is all that they fucking, that's their thought process. So a Derek Chauvin or a Mitch McConnell or a fucking even a Clarence Thomas can be out here just, that's the examples. That's the best examples they can come up with, because, that's the kind of people that be out there with it. So let's stop celebrating interracial dating. It's not thing to celebrate. It's celebrate as much as we celebrate any other dating, right? It's just as good as any other dating. It doesn't make you special. Great if you're doing it, but it doesn't make you a special person or forward thinking or progressive in any way, shape, or form. You got you know, decent people that are in interracial, you know, dating interracially, and you got some horrible, horrendous people who are dating interracially. To write an article about that, about a person in power, is so pathetic and superficial. It just it infuriates me that this person has a job. You know, I'm sitting here unemployed. This person got a job in media. You know, I'm sitting here, you know, we scraping by. This person's collecting a paycheck to write garbage like this, right? Like, give that money to somebody that'll you know, actually speak truth to power in some way. Like, instead of just like sitting here like patting them on the back and being cheerleaders for them, talking about cheerleaders, like out here cheerleading for, you know, oh, he's a white man and he's so great, he's white, you know. Okay. So anywho, I wish I had some more time to talk about it, but we're at the we're hitting the 2.5 hour mark, and we got to go right now. Got to cut it short. Well, got to cut it off because it's not short. Let's be real. Thank you so much to everyone for hanging out tonight, for chatting. What's up to Luis? I don't think Luis had commented before, so always appreciate our first-time commenters. Hope you come back. Hope you join us for some future chats. Please, to anyone that can afford to do so, please support the show. X says I'm in an interracial relationship too. You see, nice. And X says, you know, they got to harp on the identity politics. Of course, they love them some identity politics. They just love to, they want that surface level. They don't want to go even a layer deeper than that, because that would mean that they'd actually have to do their jobs and investigate somebody and try to find out, you know, speak truth to power, right? Which might risk their jobs, right? And so they don't want to do that. So they're fine with identity politics and horse race politics, and they'll cover that, but they won't cover the real stuff. You got to go to independent media to hear some real analysis of some shit. Unfortunately, Luis says correct as a white Latino. Nice. See, What Up America says that reminds me how they silenced Andrew Yang because he's Asian, and how Asians are experiencing heightened racism after COVID started. Absolutely, that's something that's been, and I hate to see it. What the worst place I hate seeing it is when it's amongst groups of color, right? Like in Black communities. Like, I've called that shit out personally when I see it, and you know, it's just, I hate the anti-China rhetoric because it's just more like xenophobic bullshit. All this like anti-China rhetoric, the China virus and all that bullshit. Any kind of, you know, any incidents like that, I hate to see it when it's you know, groups of color tearing each other down in any way. Of course, it's always quantitatively typically out, you know, disproportionately, and you know, white people doing this shit, but it still happens with other communities of color, and they try to do this to divide us up and draw these divide us up along these arbitrary lines. So I hate to see it. You know, I hope that, you know, to always call that out and say, you know, that to all communities, we got to cut that shit out, especially Black community and Black communities and other, you know, communities of color. Like, we cannot be out here helping to promote white supremacy by tearing, you know, in American exceptionalism, by tearing down other people, Asian folks, Chinese folks. It's really gross. Don't want to see that on the left in any way, you know, and I don't see it really on the left in any way, other than some people taking to the sort of anti-China rhetoric sometimes, even on the left or in left spaces. Some people do hold this like anti-China, oh, China is too much of a superpower, or you know, trying to just jumping in and piling on when we really should be trying to show some solidarity with the, you know, Asian communities here in the country, you know, Muslim communities always, and other, you know, communities of color, Jewish communities that have been facing just like unprecedented amounts of like anti-Semitism, and not just, and we know on this show we talk about it, you know, just being anti-Israel does not make you anti-Semitic, right? But definitely we've seen plenty of that. So we need to show solidarity, build solidarity across the left, and make sure we maintain solidarity with other working class groups of all colors, and ethnicities, races. So yeah, thank you so much. Please hit the like button, subscribe, share this out if you haven't done so already. Please do all three of those things. Thank you so much to everyone for being here with us tonight. Shout out to our Patreon community and our Coffee community. If you can afford to do so, please support the show on Coffee at ko-fi.com/radical democracy. Links are in the description box below. You can also support us on Patreon at patreon.com/radical democracy. We do appreciate you all. Thanks for being here with us tonight. Peace.